Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual discovery event focused on education and type 1 diabetes. It's really great to see so many people here in the audience. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Sarah, and as well as being your host today, I'm also the Community Events Officer here at JDRF. Today, we're shedding some further light on an important conversation with those with type 1 diabetes as we discuss tackling the education system whilst living with type 1, all the way from preschool up to primary school, secondary school, and then on to university or college. In this event, we're going to bring you insight from JDRF and DigiBete, as well as the experiences from our type 1 community, which we hope will add to your understanding and your tools to help manage type 1 throughout the entire educational journey. We've got a very exciting lineup this morning, so a really big thank you to everyone for joining us today. But first, just to give you some insight on JDRF, for those who might be new, we are leading the global organisation funding type 1 diabetes research. Our strength lies exclusively on our focus and singular influence on the worldwide effort to end type 1 diabetes. So our vision is a world without type 1. We work with the UK's government's two major funding bodies, the Medical Research Council and the National Institute of Health Research, to make type 1 diabetes research a priority. We work with government departments to help them understand the impacts of type 1 diabetes on the UK and the excellence in research that the UK can provide to the global mission to cure type 1. Our mission is to improve lives today, tomorrow, by accelerating life-changing breakthroughs to cure, prevent, and treat type 1 and its complications. The more excellent type 1 diabetes research we get funded, the quicker we can drive developments to cure, treat, and prevent type 1. We also advocate for the development of connected research community focused on autoimmune conditions across the UK to generate advances in knowledge and treatments for people living with autoimmune conditions, particularly type 1 diabetes. So just a little bit of housekeeping for our event today. In order for you guys to have the best quality experience watching today's event, we're advised to keep other internet use to a minimum just to help prevent any technical difficulties over Zoom. Second, in order to protect your identity, your camera and microphone is automatically turned off so we can't see or hear you. Third, your chat host today will be Elspeth from JDRF, so feel free to use the chat feature to talk amongst yourselves and share your experiences of managing type 1, as well as your feelings and experiences within education. One of the best things I think about these virtual events is how interactive they can be in the chat box section, so make sure you get involved and get to know each other. Elspeth will also be dropping in some really useful resources into the chat box throughout today's event, so do keep an eye out for them. Additionally, if you at any point have a question for our speakers or tech companies, then make sure you ask through the Q&A feature. Just go to the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen and put the person's name or company in brackets and ask away. You can see an example of that on the screen in blue. We have Dan from JDRF as our Q&A host today, who will keep an eye on this section to ensure that all your questions will be answered. So hopefully this creates a positive experience for you this morning. We want to say a massive thank you to our sponsors for this morning's event. So they make all these events happen. So thank you to Camdiab, Abbott, Airliquide, Dexcom, Insulet, Medtrum, and Medtronic. And here's a quick glance at our agenda for today. So as you'll see, it's a pretty packed one. We've got some amazing guest speakers involved in our sessions today. Just a couple of things to note: that our first comfort break will take place around 10 to 11 and our second one around 10 past 12, just to give you some time to grab some refreshments. And then we will aim to finish up around 1 p.m. although the event will actually stay open until 1:30 if anyone does want to read through the chat box or the Q&A section. So do bear that in mind. So it's my pleasure to introduce our key partners on this event. We've got DigiBete here. Big welcome to Michelle, Maddie, Sam, Rob, Chris and Heather from DigiBete, who are paramount in JDRF's community engagement and who'll be sharing with us some brilliant resources in the education space today. We're going to kick off our event today at the beginning of the education journey, so preschool. We've got a fantastic 5-minute video which talks about the diagnosis of young children, which features Katie and her son Noah. Following on from this, we'll have a conversation with Michelle, Katie and Luke to discuss what to expect when transitioning between primary school and big school whilst managing type 1 diabetes. It's worth mentioning that Katie and Luke are on the call today, so if you do have any questions for them, they will be able to answer those in the Q&A section.
Hi, I'm Sonia and I'm Toby's mum. And Toby's had diabetes now for a year. A bit longer than 6 weeks.
My name is Isma Shine and I'm mother of Mohammed, and he has been diagnosed with diabetes type 1 in November 2021.
I'm Katie and I'm Noah's mum. What's your name?
Noah. My name is Noah.
So Noah was 11 months old when he was diagnosed. Before that, for about a month, he was quite poorly. We were in and out of the doctors, getting antibiotics and all sorts of things just to try and see what was wrong. He just started nursery, so they thought that he was possibly coming down with all the usual nursery bugs. And then I kept persisting, so we went to the doctors twice a week for the 4 weeks.
He started off looking really unwell and he was very thin. So I rang the doctors. The doctor said, is there anyone in your family diabetic? No. Is there anyone on his dad's side diabetic? No. Oh, well, possibilities of being diabetic are very low, he said to me.
I took him to the doctors and he was not very responsive, very, very poorly, not wanting to eat anything, weeing a lot, was getting through nappies every half an hour.
His dirty, his nappy, he fold his nappy about in 30-40 minutes sometimes. I have to change for 15 minutes. And I have to wake up at the night time because he's peeing a lot and drinking water a lot.
So I spoke to all my friends about it and I said, Toby's drinking loads of water. And they were like, well, how much water? And I went, bottles of water. I can't fill him. He's drinking bath water. I'm sure he's diabetic.
The doctors still weren't very concerned. They weren't sure what was going on, so they just sent me to hospital to get him checked out. And again, nobody was overly concerned until they asked for a urine sample. And he had a drink of water and weed it out instantly because his kidneys weren't working anymore. And then within seconds, they knew what was wrong and rushed us through and got him straight onto an insulin drip. And he spent the night in the ICU that night, which was hard as a parent.
After the water sample, I rang the doctors 3 times to see if it had come back and nothing come back. Then one day at work I got the dreaded phone call. Is it Tobias's mum? Yes it is. Is there a problem? You need to take him straight to hospital.
And doctor suggested me to took him to emergency, and I take him there, and I just told him what is going on with Talha, and they just checked his glucose level, and then after taking his glucose level and everything, they after about one hour after that, they said he has been diagnosed with the type 1 diabetes.
And then a week in hospital with a lot of information. It was very overwhelming, but we had lots to learn. All the doctors and nurses helped us to understand what was going on.
And they told me how to give him injection, how to manage his food with injection, with insulin and carbohydrate and everything. They just told me, and really it was really helpful.
And that was actually the hardest bit, was going home and actually finding out how we had to do it at home and how to cope as parents of a baby with type 1 who couldn't tell us what was wrong as well. So yeah, it was a steep learning curve.
I was crying a lot. It was shocking, and like my mind is not accepting that this thing is going to happen with my son. But obviously I can't change. This is nature and I can't change. But doctor told that they give me encouragement, and they said he is in safe hands now.
I didn't stop crying for about 6 months. And then I just got on with it. I thought I need to be the best mum I can to support him, really. And it was just a shock.
Okay. So thanks for joining us today. Today we've got Katie and Luke, who are parents to a young child. I'll let them do their proper introductions. And myself, Michelle, I'm from DigiBete. I have a young daughter who has type 1. We've also been through the setting of going through nursery and primary school. So we're going to have a chat today about where we've all found support and hear Katie and Luke's story. So do you mind, guys, if I just hand over to you initially and then introduce yourselves? And yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit about going into nursery and the diagnosis, and yeah, how long you've been.
Yeah. So I'm Katie and this is Luke.
You can do it, it's fine.
So we've got a little boy called Noah, who's now 6, who was diagnosed at 11 months old. He just started nursery and he was diagnosed. It's a long diagnosis story, but he was very, very poorly and went into DKA. And then we had a very steep learning curve, as everyone does on type 1, of trying to learn how to look after him and get nursery trained up on how to look after him as well, which was an interesting time because we were learning at the same time. So it was very much, we had hospital training, the nursery had hospital training, and then we all just kind of learned and progressed together. The tech change run injections to begin with a Dexcom sensor. We then moved after 3 months to the Medtronic 640G
with the N-light.
With an N-light sensor. Sensors weren't always working that great because Noah was a baby. So it was really interesting to work with nursery and see what they thought of the tech as well as how we were using the tech, but they were learning at exactly the same speed as we were at times. We weren't really much ahead of them to begin with, and they were fantastic. They had the same key worker that went with Noah from his first room up to each of the rooms until he graduated nursery before going on to reception. So there was always somebody in the room that had a wealth of knowledge. And then each time he moved rooms, we made sure that another 2 or 3 people were trained up so that there was plenty of people in the room if his key worker had to be absent for whatever reason or changing somebody else's nappy, that there was already somebody in the room who knew what to do if he started beeping or alarming.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was just thinking the same day. Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking there from what you guys are saying there, I mean, because we found that we were learning at the same time, especially when they're so little and you're going straight into nursery. Did you find that was there anything, well, I suppose like you say, it's good communication, isn't it, with the nursery, and I guess making them feel as comfortable as you can, whilst you're also learning. I know for us, like we had a nursery nurse, and one of the things that she helped was she hadn't looked after someone with type 1 before, but she came up with this like little system to help, because our daughter Florence, she was a little bit older than your son Noah, but she could communicate a little bit, so it's kind of, they helped as part of the growing up process of helping her to sort of understand, communicate with them how she might be feeling, because we didn't have the tech then as well. So they taught her something like, oh, if you feel like something, we're going to test you, but do you feel funny? And so we've kind of brought that with us, and I thought that really helped us, and it's helped Florence to kind of understand her body a little bit. You know, it's helping her communicate. I don't know if there was any top tips or something, or things that you found that are on the journey that might have helped. You know, I know obviously the tech does help as well.
Yeah, I think going back to that communication sort of piece, Emma, Noah's key worker, was very keen to notice when Noah felt shaky, and that was one of the words that we used at home as well as in nursery. It was that common sort of shared language. So Noah would be able to say shaky or I feel shaky, and then we'd know, or Emma would know to check his finger. Obviously, we were, as Katie said, a little bit further on in our journey, so we were starting to pick up when he looked shaky or when he was displaying signs of hypoglycemia. So I think the biggest top tip is having that shared language. One thing we also did in nursery, and we do now in school, is have like a written notepad that just goes between. So when Noah was initially diagnosed, as we said, he was on a Dexcom and multiple daily injections, but the Dexcom didn't really agree with him. Because he was so little. I think Katie mentioned that earlier on. So because he was so small, the readings were really off, just wrong. So nursery were really good at saying, this is what the Dexcom's reading. So let's say it's reading 10, and this is what his finger's reading. It's reading 4. He's having a hypo. And they were really good at detailing that different times through the day. If he looked shaky or said he felt shaky, they were really good at doing that. And we've brought that through into the infant school that he's in now, and that works really well.
Yeah.
Even if I forget to fill it in sometimes.
I think making sure that we're writing it in the evenings and the mornings to say what's happened. I did actually found his nursery book a while ago, and I was clearing out the study, and we used to write things like, Noah slept for 12 hours again. He was a very good sleeper, so he would sleep, we would be awake sorting out hypos, but bless his baby, he would just sleep through things and take glucojuice. He still does take glucojuice in his sleep, bless him, whilst we're sat there monitoring him closely. And just telling nursery, because he also went through a phase of waking up screaming in the mornings because he'd been having so many hypos during the night, and we were told it's possibly because he feels like he's got a hangover, which when you told your 2-year-old feels like that is really rubbish. So being able to tell nursery that he had however many hypos during the night, he's woken up really upset, he doesn't feel 100%, just to keep an eye on him, and he might need longer naps today or
a cuddle
whatever, and to make sure all that was documented. And then for us, because before we had a pump, obviously we couldn't see what was going on either remotely, or when we got home we couldn't flick through the pump and see what was going on. So just writing down how many carbs he had for lunch, and
we did.
If he ate everything, and they made sure that if he didn't eat everything, there was lots of yogurts on hand, so that he'd have a yogurt or a banana to top up his carbs, and just telling us what had happened so that we could then look at patterns and plan for, if that happens again, what would work better.
No, that sounds brilliant. It is, it's all that communication. And I think that what you were just saying there about when you arrive in the morning, I think those conversations are really important. And I know for different stages of education that can get more difficult, but in nursery or primary school, when you're doing that drop off, it does help for the teacher to understand they might not be quite themselves this morning. They have had a rough night, like, you know, that your average child might not have. So I think that's so important, to start that communication from the start of the day. So that's brilliant. So then obviously you guys, you've been through the nursery process, and then you've moved on to primary school. We're going through the lives very quickly, and I know we'll be talking a little bit more with Heather shortly about primary school setting.
Heather.
Is there sort of, how did you find that transition? So obviously you build a relationship, don't you, with the nursery teachers, and then it is that next big step. And I know there's lots of steps throughout the journey. How did you find, if you can, remember the sort of going to a completely new setting, new school, they've got new people, Noah's, got to settle in as well.
A big step.
It was huge. So we wrote Emma again, and I'm going back to nursery here, but we wrote Emma quite a lengthy letter, just thanking her for everything that she'd done for Noah and all these systems that we put in place. We tried to carry across to infant school, and I used to be a primary school teacher, so I know sort of what day-to-day is like and all that kind of stuff. So we went in on one of the teacher training days. We delivered a nice little PowerPoint presentation with learning objectives. We went through sort of some theory, in inverted commas, around this is hypoglycemia, this is hyperglycemia, these are the symptoms, this is what might affect his blood sugar. And we talked about if he had a hypo during the night, if if it's too hot, if it's too cold, if he's happy, if he's sad, if he's eaten, if he's not eaten. We talked about all these things that will affect him during the day, and we also were keen to get across that we could do the same thing every minute of every day. Get up at 7, have breakfast at 7:15, to school for it, all that kind of stuff. So we were keen to say that no 2 days are going to be the same. It's always going to be different, and that's why we need this sort of constant vigilance, as it were.
And cover the main things that they need to be aware of. So hypos and what the consequences of that is, and hypos and consequences, and the key things, rather than, because there's so much that you need to tell them.
Yeah.
But we were happy that, because Noah's now got a phone because he's on a closed loop system, that they can text us on the phone at any time and ask questions. They can call us any time of the day. We're happy to answer questions. So it was more trying to get all those key things in so that Noah was safe, but whilst leaving some things that we're just going to have to see how the day went and see how, like, if he hasn't quite eaten enough at lunchtime, let us know, and we can discuss what we do next about it. It depends what his blood sugars are doing. It depends on lots of different factors. So it was one of those things of, here's what you need to do to keep him safe. They're the key things. Everything else we'll learn together, and we'll come up with plans and processes of how that works. And those things have changed each year as the year's gone on, depending on him and how his bloods have been affected on all sorts of things. He's got a lot more active since starting school, so trying to balance out PE and after school clubs and making sure he's not spending the whole time in a hypo has been interesting.
And I think going back to my point, alongside that sort of theory element, it was like a practical, this is how you do a finger prick. We did it with Noah. This is how you deliver an injection if the pump fails. This is his pump. This is the tube, blah, 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 blah. So we went through that quite extensively, but without trying to bombard them. So prior to that training day, in the previous term, we got in touch with the Senko at the school, or they got in touch with us. I can't remember which way around it was. We had an initial meeting with them, talked about Noah, talked about his needs, talked about how we would progress that through the first term and what that would look like. And then on an annual basis, we meet with, I think it's an annual basis, isn't it? We meet with the Senko and discuss the care plan. Term basis, discuss the care plan. And then at the end of the academic year, we talk about how we're going to do the inset for the following year. So there is an annual meeting and there is a termly meeting as well, just to talk through those points. Now,
as well as the notebook that goes back and forth.
As well as a notebook that goes down. So we're quite lucky in that regard, and I'm very aware that some schools might have a young person with type 1 for the first time, whereas we've been quite lucky that the school that Noah goes to had somebody with type 1 a couple of years ago, and we're friends with them, so that's quite useful.
That's helpful. And I think making it really clear that communication is our key thing, that we all need to be able to communicate, that we want them to ask questions. We would much rather they ask us a question, even if it's something that's simply sorted and that they think, oh, that's a silly question. We'd much rather they ask that and Noah stays safe. So we haven't had many phone calls this week. It's not been too bad so far.
We've had 2 texts.
2 texts. He went very, very high today. But other than that, he's been okay. But we just want them to ask questions, and because then they're going to learn if they're asking questions, and we're saying to them, well, tell me what is active insulin is, tell me what his blood sugars are doing, what are the arrows doing on his sensor, tell me these things. They're going to start learning what we're looking for, to then be able to start doing that themselves, hopefully when they're experts in a few month's time.
That's it, isn't it? It's like each new year, you sort of reset a little bit, don't you, and sort of go through. What I was going to ask you was about the care plan, and did you have your diabetes team as well? I take, so when you were meeting with the school, because I know we've done that as well, but also it's quite nice having the diabetes team there, isn't it? That they sort of can go through the process with the teachers as well. Did you have that too?
They did online training at the hospital, because it was just post-COVID when Noah started school. So it was online training that the hospital arranged, and then it was us to go in and do all the kind of practical bits. So we've carried on doing that every year. So Luke gave his third presentation this week to the staff, and some people came back who'd been, his teacher was one of the reception teachers when he was in reception, but not his teacher. So she'd been in the training originally, and a few other staff came back for refresher training as well. So they've got plenty, and the school have been really on with how many people are trained up. So I think we had about 8 or 9 people on Wednesday when we did the training, and again beforehand we've had a good 10 staff who've been at the training to make sure that there's plenty of people in the classroom at break time, at lunchtime, who know how to look after Noah, so that there's always somebody around who can give inch and then prick his finger and read his phone and know what's going on.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? It's not just sitting in the classroom. It's like, if the dinner ladies are kind of aware, or the person who's covering the playground, like you say, just obviously give them the independence, but know that someone's just keeping a little eye out. Oh, that's brilliant. No, thank you. So I've just noticed the time, it's kind of our slot is over, but I want any closing thoughts, not to put you under pressure, but I mean, that has been so helpful what you've shared, and we'll look to maybe put some top tips together based on some of these conversations that are coming out today.
Nice one. I think I'm going to do a shameless self-plug here. A lot of people have asked me for the PowerPoint, so if anybody does want a PowerPoint for schools, like I say, it goes through hyper and things that affect it, you're very welcome to it. My head's just got very big and I've gone very red, but you're very welcome to.
It's been sharing it all over Instagram.
I've had about 7 people take me up on the offer, so you're very welcome to use it and butcher it. That's fine.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, and thanks again for your time. And long may it all continue well with the weather, and we cool down a little bit so we get some better sugar levels.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much to the DigiBete team there, and Katie and Luke, for that wonderful insight and great practical ideas as well into what to expect and how to manage type 1 during that transition between primary and secondary. Just wanted to point out, please remember to use the Q&A function if you do have any questions. Katie and Luke are still on the call, so they'll be able to answer anything. We're now going to hear from Maddie from DigiBete, Fiona Campbell and Jenny Foster, who are going to discuss the way healthcare teams work together in nurseries and schools. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Lovely to be here, and a big thank you to JDRF for co-hosting this today. It's we're joined now by Dr. Fiona Campbell, and hopefully soon by Jenny Foster, who has logged on, but here she is. Hello. So we're having problems seeing you, aren't we? A little technical issue there, Jenny, but we've got you. So great. So I think we'll just go and have a little introductions for ourselves first of all, and just to help everybody kind of understand context, and then we're just going to have an open discussion really about what good care in schools looks like, because what's really clear is that across the country, not always families know what to expect or what they should expect, what's reasonable, and it's really tricky, isn't it, to kind of walk that plank between trying to make sure your child is safeguarded and included, but also understand that teachers are under a lot of pressure too, and there's a lot going on in the classroom, and there's lots of different needs, and it's kind of how we balance that, build those relationships, and build a kind of collaborative, supportive structure between yourselves and your child in school. And I think we were joined here by Fiona today, I should say Dr. Fiona Campbell, OBE, who is here to talk to us about, your massive experience really in terms of the bigger picture, what we're all trying to work towards with schools, what good looks like. And Fiona, I'll let you introduce yourself and your experience, and over to Jenny, and then we'll kind of take the discussion from there. So first of all, I'll just say I'm Maddie Julian, and I am CEO of DigiBete. So we're a patient-led or community-led organisation, really looking at how we can work in partnership with healthcare professionals and charity partners like JDRF to make a big difference to young people's experiences growing up with type 1 diabetes. So we're really interested in making sure that kind of all those treatment pathways and all the support is there for people to live well with type 1. So I'm going to pass you over now to Fiona, and you're going to introduce yourself, if that's okay.
I am. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the invite to come and join you this morning. I think there's over 100 of us gathered on a Saturday morning, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm Fiona Campbell. I'm a consultant in children and young people's diabetes at Leeds Children's Hospital, and I also look after the networks of care across the country, and make sure, if you like, that the standards of care that we're trying to provide as healthcare professionals are kept as high as we can. But most importantly, it's actually making sure that the standards are the same no matter where you live as a family, because you've got enough concern on your plate looking after little people with diabetes. You don't need to worry about the standards of care of the hospitals which you attend. So you have to leave that job to me. I've been in diabetes care now for almost 40 years and a consultant for almost 30 years in Leeds, and have seen quite a lot of families. Currently we have almost 600 families attending our service in Leeds. So we're big, we're busy, we get a lot of experience as a result. And one of our main areas is trying to ensure that our colleagues in the education school arena are supporting families with their young people with their diabetes. I have to also say I work with Maddie. I give clinical advice to the DigiBete team for the development of the resources. So we're trying to make sure the advice that you get when you go on the DigiBete platform or the app is consistent and accurate. And I also work with Jenny, who is one of our network managers up in the Northeast. So on that, I'll hand over to Jenny.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, everybody. Thank you, JDRF and DigiBete, for inviting me to join this morning on this very miserable Northeast Saturday morning, unfortunately. So I'm Jenny Foster. I am one of Fiona's network managers. So there's 11 networks across the country, and I look after the Northeast and North Cumbria region, and have done for about 10 or 11 years now, which is crazy. It's gone so fast. But my other hat is that I am actually mum to 2 boys with type 1 diabetes as well. They were diagnosed aged 8 and aged 9 and are now 21 and 19. So we've been right through. I can't, I don't have any experience in the nursery world because they were 8 and 9 diagnosed, but certainly got lots of experience of the school system and the university system, and really understand how important it is, as Fiona said, to ensure that the care is the same no matter where in the country you live. Yeah, I've passionately been involved with quite a lot of the schools work that the network have delivered over the last 10 years, carb counting, resources, looking at school dinners, the individualized school care plans that are across the country, schools training. So lots of bits and bobs to make sure that we standardize that care. So I'm delighted to be here today, and we'll share whatever experiences I can, and hopefully get some good tips.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Yeah, I mean, I think it's that kind of, it's brilliant that, you know, the professional network that work to improve care for families across the country also are very passionate about including that lived experience as well. And I think the DigiBete partnership is about that too. So it's bringing, you know, it's bringing those lived experience lived experiences to the theory, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
we'll all be going through this at the moment. So this week, I should have said I'm mum to a little boy with type 1 diagnosed at 20 months and is now 9. And he was just writing my email yesterday to school saying, well, there's theory and then there's the practice of diabetes, isn't there? And that's kind of that's where we're all at, really. How do we balance those sort of two things? So there's the care plan, which does need to be good clinical information and standardized, but actually for a lot of schools as well, they'll look at that and they'll think, oh, well, I don't know how to actually apply it. How does it work in practice? So we need to, as parents, our job really is to try and get them there, isn't it? And to bring them on and to not allow diabetes to become so overwhelming to the school that they're not as engaged as we want them to be with the care. And actually we need them to wrap themselves around our young people to make sure that they're giving them that care. So great. So I think the first thing really, Fiona, from a question really, I think that the group would probably enjoy listening to is, what do you think? If you could talk us through a little newbie child starting let's do a 5-year-old, let's do an 11-year-old. So the 5-year-old's starting school for the very first time, and what would you expect the diabetes teams to be doing, and how do you think the school would then take that on, and what does that good care look like? I know it's difficult, it's very individualized across the 4 nations as well, so we have to think about the context, because we've got people on the call from Scotland, from Northern Ireland, from the southwest, all corners, Wales, but there are some sort of basics that we would expect to happen, aren't there? So what's the base level?
Well, I think what we need to remember is that we're handing our young person from a home that is working with diabetes every minute of every day at that age to an establishment which has the patient or pupil safety at its heart, but it doesn't have the experience. So we've got to break down all the knowledge that we have as professionals and as parents and make it very, very simple for the establishments, so the nurseries and the preschools and the schools. Because in a classroom, depending obviously where you go, you may have up to 25 to 30 pupils, and each little person may have their own individual healthcare issue, and you don't know that when you have your young one with diabetes. It could be one of 30 conditions that the teacher is handling. So good care looks like a simplified map in the classroom that the teacher can look at, and you as a parent can guarantee that if this is followed, and it isn't too complex, because the more complex it is, the least likely it is to be followed and the more danger your child is in. So if you want real top-tip safety, is the most simple, easy to follow, will get the care that your individual child needs as fast as possible. So we have a system where we have a newly diagnosed 5-year-old. We're looking ahead with the parents at the steps that are needed. We train in the management of the medical condition, but we look at the child in their community. And we often visit the school in advance of the child starting, or we visit the school with the mum and dad of the new young 5-year-old, and immediately set up a tripartite relationship. So the family, the healthcare professional, and the school. And we clarify the understanding of each, because very often the expectation of the family is simply too high and is not achievable. And so the healthcare professionals are there to say, I know this is what you do, I know this is what you would like to happen, but it's just not achievable and not necessary in the school setting. And then with the school, we need to make sure they understand what needs to be done for safety and the best health within the school. And we need to agree between the school and the parents the best and safe way forward. Now, the majority of parents look after their young children brilliantly, and they will actually see a shortfall always when they hand over to school. The care they'll perceive is just not as they would do it. But remember, there are those families who cannot cope well with diabetes, and the school are their safe haven and actually where they get the best diabetes care. So there are two sides to the coin. The schools are trying really hard. It may not be up to some people's standards, but it's a whole lot better than other people's standards at home. And we're just trying to get the balance. So simplicity, clarity, relationship building, communication, and giving your young person confidence that when they're in the school, they will be safe, they will be well, and they will have fun, and their activities will not be restricted so that they don't stand out from the crowd. So that's a three-way. We attend school, we were explicit in what we require, it's written down on a care plan, but it's not complicated, and it may not be to the standard that you really, really would do yourself, but it's sufficient for everyday practice and doable. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Fiona. So I'm just going to, before we go on to Jenny, I'm just going to sort of prod the bear slightly there and say that I know that some families have experienced a situation where the teams have refused to go into school to do any training. Now that puts the family in a really difficult situation.
Yes.
But sometimes the school will say, well, we'll only listen to the team, but the team won't come in. Where do you go with that sort of situation? Yes. where we know that care is suboptimal with some of these, and we can work within our networks, but sometimes this is wider than that. So how do we, what advice could you give those families about reapproaching the team and saying, actually,
so in this world now, we've all got used to trying to work virtually, haven't we? We've been forced into that, and in many respects that's been quite good and very successful. Personally, there is no excuse for any professional team not to go into school. Okay, now I don't necessarily mean physically, and I'm in the town centre in the city of Leeds. I can walk to virtually all the schools I've had to, but I'm fully aware that in Ireland and Wales and Scotland and some of our areas in England, you just simply can't do that. But you can get a Teams link, or you can go somewhere where you can be encouraged to sit and meet somebody from school. So there could be a school person, a mum or dad, assisted if they need be to join a call. Not everyone's familiar with the technology, and the healthcare professional. So I cannot understand in this day and age why a tripartite discussion cannot be set up either physically or virtually. And it's essential that our healthcare professionals liaise with the school environment or the nursery school environment, because 8 hours up to or more sometimes every day, Monday to Friday, could be the responsibility that they have. And I don't understand anyone who wouldn't want to liaise with a healthcare professional team.
So I suppose just to say that if there are problems, there are things like the Diabetes UK helpline, aren't they? That you can phone to get some advice. They could, if there are issues that we could solve, they're welcome to drop DigiBete a line, and we can give through the email, and we can give advice, or JDRF. They
can come to the network setup as well. I'm sure, Jenny, if that was the case in North East and North Cumbria, we can absolutely
reach out and ask for help, basically, I think is what we're saying, because otherwise, we are our young person's only advocate sometimes in this journey. Indeed. And when they're 5, or 6, 7, they don't have a voice, do they? So we have to think about sometimes. So sometimes you have to sort of step outside of the box and actually raise it as a serious concern, and with your locality or your your LEA or wherever you are based, to actually say this is not okay and this needs sorting out as well. So there will be local environments that you can, local education authorities that you can raise it with. There will be the charities, the diabetes charities, DigiBete. So please do make sure that you're able to do that. Can I just come on to you, Jenny, very quickly? So Jenny, I know that there's been lots of work and lots of thinking around things like what good support looks like. And you've been through two very different, I don't know were you happy to kind of outline just very quickly your own experiences there? I know we're not going to have a lot of time. I think we're probably on the last minute or two. So yeah, if you could just, outline for me what your experiences have been, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. I'll do it as quickly as I possibly can. I'm going to get 12 years into 1 minute, but yeah, I've got two very different boys. So I've got the eldest was diagnosed aged 8 and just took to it like a duck to water, really. Never had any issues in terms of schooling. He just got on with it. The teachers were all very, very good in supporting him. But I was a very engaged mum. So really, the healthcare professionals did go in at the beginning when he was first diagnosed, but I kept up with the communication and the training, very much like the young couple who were on earlier on the call with Noah in nursery. I was very much on the ball and I was in there all the time, and I wasn't working at the time, so I felt like I was in a luxury position to be able to do that, and not a lot of families are in that situation. So I was really lucky. Then when my younger son was diagnosed a couple of years later, it threw everything that I thought I knew from the 2 years of Ewan being diagnosed into complete disarray, because he dealt with it completely differently and continues to do so. So we're living in the same household, same family dynamics, same place, the kids have gone to the same school, we've had the same care from the same healthcare team, but the way they have managed and dealt with their diabetes over the last 12 years could not be further apart, like literally further apart. One loves tech, one hates tech. One engages in it, one doesn't. One has high HbA1c, one has perfect HbA1c. Literally every element of it is different, and school has been the same. We've fought for them to get the support they need in terms of stop the clock and things like that. And then, the younger one, he, gets the stop the clock, goes into a different room to sit his exams and things, but actually just continues with the exam and drinks his orange juice if he feels hypo, doesn't use the stop the clock. So you fight for all this stuff, and then the kids actually don't even want it. They just want to get on with it. They don't want to be seen as different and all of that. So that standardizing care is fantastic, but it has to be individualized. I can't stress that enough. I think no matter, I think I'm the perfect example of two kids who have managed it so completely differently, even though everything around them is the same. So individualizing the care to that young child, what they want and what they perceive as good care for them, looks very different from what, as a mum, I perceived was good care for them. They felt what they wanted was very different from what I felt they needed. So certainly as your children get older, if we're talking a lot, I don't know if a lot of the audience have got younger kids, but talking to your kids as they go and understanding what they want and what they feel is necessary within school is so important, and has been vital for me, because I've had to deal with it in two very different ways. Sorry, I will shut up.
That's really, really interesting, Jenny, because I think that sort of comes to that whole thing about it being a partnership, but actually taking that into, say, the 11 plus, really looking at that young person's voice in that as well. So then it becomes the parents and the young person, and what does good care look like? And I know later on in today, we're going to be talking to some teachers, and we're going to be talking about ECHPs as well, and what where that kind of sits. And I know you've done some work on that, and we should probably ask you back onto that too, Jenny. But we've there's lots of thinking around that, and I think really what we all need to be thinking about is what's the best thing for this child and why, and do they have other difficulties as well, and how do they take the diabetes, how do they manage it, if you've got a young person like I do, actually, with quite a lot of anxiety issues and things like that and diabetes, then you might be thinking a little bit more around the ECHP, because it's a bit of a challenge, whereas if you've got a young person who's able to take it in their stride, which I know is probably it's a huge thing to take in your stride, but wants to not be seen as different and wants to kind of, then it's a different thing again, isn't it? So There's no right or wrong, is there? And I think if you go onto the DigiBete website and go onto the schools page, these are resources we made with JDRF. There's a whole series called Diabetes in Schools is Not Black and White. And that's exactly, you know, how we all need to think about this. It's very, very individual, but please do reach out. And, you know, if you want any support from either us or JDRF or Diabetes UK charity, you know, do get in contact with us, but we'll be very happy to take your calls and to support you, or email us through the hello@digibete.org. And if you've got any questions for Fiona or Jenny from a lived experience point of view, but also because Jenny's managing a massive network of families across the northeast who all have these different issues and actually has quite a lot of experience, then please do reach out and we'll see what we can do in terms of getting you some answers.
So also just to say, Jenny's leading our endeavour, you know, sort of modernising and making contemporary all the schools' resources and the training, which will be done with yourself as well with DigiBete. So we're, you know, all the closed loop stuff we've got to get on top of now. So we're in the process of modernising that so it will be a reliable source of information for people.
Yeah, so that's the with JDRF. So this is the JDRF e-learning module that is with the network, the Digital Diabetes Network. So DigiBete and JDRF and the Diabetes Network are now delivering this new program, which is going to be remodernising the training platform. And we're going to be putting a lot more about emotional well-being into that platform this time, because at the moment it's quite flat in terms of this is what diabetes is and this is how it's managed for teachers. But actually, we need them to understand that emotional well-being aspect of diabetes, because diabetes isn't just finger pricks, is it? It's actually, you know, managing the crisis.
A whole lot fewer finger pricks these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or the tech. Lovely. And you've just seen the e-learning module is on there now. And this is what we're going to be refreshing, but it'll be hosted on DigiBete next year. So exciting times. This time next year when we come on, we'll be able to show you the new resource, which would be great. Anyway, big thank you for you both coming on today. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And if anyone's got any questions, please do get in touch. I think there's some questions in the Q&A, which you, Fiona and Jenny, if you'd like to go on and have a just answer
I'll have a look.
That would be fantastic. Okay, and thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. That was brilliant. Yes, just to flag that we do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So if anyone else wants to ask anything, now's the time, and to do so in that feature. But yes, we hope that information that was provided shows some crucial support in those education settings. That was a wonderful conversation. So thank you both very much. I also just wanted to flag that this video, the recording, will be sent to you via email after a few days once we've edited it, and it is publicly available on our YouTube once it's uploaded, so you can share it far and wide to whoever you want to. We're now going to have a quick 2-minute presentation from Cher from Medtrum.
Hello, I'm Cher from Medtrum. I'd like to introduce you to Medtrum's Nano Touch Care system, where size really matters. Next slide, please. Medtrum's Touch Care system is more than just a patch pump. It is an insulin pump and a CGM that can be worked together or independently. When together, you have the benefit of the predictive low glucose suspend function, which can help protect against hypos, especially giving peace of mind at night. Next slide, please. Nano's Touch Care system can be controlled by a compatible smartphone, either Android or Apple. This gives greater freedom with no extra components to carry. Less to forget, less to carry, less to lose. The Nano Touch Care pump is small and discreet. The white part is the pump that holds the basal data and is reusable. The grey part is a reservoir that is disposable. The reservoir holds 200 units of insulin and can be used for 3 days. We also now have a 300 patch pump unit, which is ideal for heavy insulin users. It can be integrated with our CGM and is future-proofed and ready for the hybrid closed-loop system. Next slide. Our CGM is also small and discreet. It has a 14-day wear time and guaranteed for 10 days. It has a rechargeable transmitter. It is gives real-time readings without the need of fingerprinting or scanning. Can be standalone or integrated with the patch pump. Next slide, please. Thank you. It is simple to use the bolus calculator with the Easy Patch app. You can use the extended, combo or normal bolus, which will give the flexibility to give insulin in a way that suits you. It is as discreet as sending a text. With the Easy Follow app, real-time data can be shared with family and healthcare professionals with no limit to the number of followers. Next slide. The personal diabetes manager is ideal for children who cannot take a phone to school and uses the bolus calculator in the same way as the Easy Patch app. Next slide. Medtrum is here to support you with 24/7 technical support, school care plans, training videos, to name a few, as well as e-learning now coming on board. Next slide. Medtrum is here. Oh, didn't do that. Please feel free to look at our website and social media platforms, request a free demo pump patch to try at home. Thank you for letting me present today. Many thanks. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cher. And thank you for being here and for Medtrum's continued support. If anyone has any questions for Cher, just pop them in the Q&A and just put in brackets Medtrum or Cher. We're now going to hear from Louise from Medtronic.
Hello from me and Lenny. Insulin pumps deliver insulin to your body, and this insulin helps your body to use the glucose properly, giving you the energy to do lots and lots of fun activities. Lenny uses insulin pump therapy to manage his diabetes. Lenny, can you tell us more about your insulin pump? Lenny's insulin pump has 3 main parts: the pump, the reservoir, and the infusion set. Let's learn more about each one. The pump. Lenny has this with him all day and night. It's about the size of a deck of cards. Inside the pump is a reservoir, which Lenny fills with insulin from a vial. Attached to the reservoir is a long tube with a cannula at the end. This is called an infusion set. The cannula is attached to a space on his tummy. When it is time to change his infusion set, Lenny makes sure he places the new infusion set in a new space. The pump, reservoir, and infusion set are all connected so that the insulin can travel from the reservoir along the infusion set tubing and out through the infusion set placed on his body so that Lenny can get the insulin he needs. Thank you, Lenny, for telling us all about insulin pumps. It was great to see you again today, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Lenny, for the introduction. My name is Louise. I'm a technical consultant that work at Medtronic. We now have a new 7-day extended wear infusion set. It's really easy to use, creates less waste, and gives your infusion sites more time to heal. If you would like more information about this, please put your questions in the Q&A, and Nicola and myself will answer these this morning. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
We're now going to be joined by Deborah from Insulet. Welcome, Deborah.
So the Omnipod 5 system, it's the first tubeless automated insulin delivery for people with type 1 diabetes. And it's really simple to use. It's just a pod, it's waterproof, it's discreet, and it again takes you away from those insulin injections. It works for 72 hours continuous wear, and that's a 3-day wear, and it can be programmed to your personal needs. So it's really easy to use. Step 1, you just fill the pod with your rapid acting insulin, apply the pod, and then press start on the Omnipod controller, where it'll then automatically deploy a cannula under the skin. If you look at the right of the screen there, you can see the pod and place sensor placement. We do just guide you there to say your sensor and pod both need to be on the same side of the body. thank you for that. That was a brief introduction to the Omnipod 5 system. To get any further information, if you've got your phone there, take the QR codes there, but there will be the Omnipod specialist team link and phone number available in the chat box for you to just contact us, where you will link to my team, the Omnipod specialist team, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for being here and for Insulet's continued support. We're now going to move on to our next segment of the event, where we're going to discuss all things primary and secondary school. And to introduce this topic, we're going to watch a short video from DigiBete about the Key Stage 1 experience, followed by a discussion with Michelle from DigiBete and Heather, who is a parent to a son with type 1.
It's not something you should be blamed for getting, because no one knows how anyone gets it.
When I feel low, sometimes it's scary because I don't know if someone's able to reach me in time.
When I'm high, it feels like when I feel sick.
Sometimes if I'm low, I can't see things very well.
The most common type of diabetes in children and young people is something called type 1 diabetes. What's important to realise about this is that it's not caused by anything that you've done. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. It attacks the cells specifically that make something called insulin. Insulin's a really important hormone because it helps your body to control your blood glucose levels. And when you don't have enough of it, your blood glucose levels would get higher and higher.
Everybody needs to know that for these children, particularly as they get older, if they're trying to get your attention, then you need to know why and you need to address it.
I'd like people to know that it's hard to deal with diabetes and you have to do injections and cannulas all the time.
Lots and lots of things affect your blood glucose, and food is one, exercise is another, but there's lots and lots of other things.
It's important when managing a child with type 1 diabetes that you've had relevant training, that you have more than one person in the school trained and who's understanding, because you need to have conversations.
I think making sure that any staff that got direct contact with the children have as much training and as much awareness as they possibly can, but also for the wider school team, that everybody's aware that these children do have type 1 diabetes and what that actually means.
I want the day to be as normal as possible for those children, because I know for a fact that they want to be included, and it's really important for me as a teacher and for my staff that these children feel safe but also feel included in what we do.
When I get a new teacher, I get worried because she doesn't know about my diabetes.
I also did 2 online courses. So I did the basic one and then I did the advanced one to kind of get a bit of a deeper understanding of that. So that really pushed me forward.
It's a lot and you can't possibly take it all in the first couple of days.
You can see with this child that I look after is his colour drains straight away. If he's going low, he gets grumpy, he can get a bit emotional, a bit teary, begins to struggle with his work, focusing. Then when he's high, he wants the toilet all the time, wants the toilet. Yeah, tummy ache, a little bit excited, again, can't focus.
It varies so much depending on the child themselves, that you really need to get to know that child to be able to get into the habit of picking up on those signals and signs as to when they're not feeling very well or when they're acting differently.
Some days you think, it's great, the technology is helping, and other days the technology completely fails and you have to go back to old school.
Everybody's type of diabetes is different, so if you've got another child in school who also has type 1 diabetes, they may be managed completely differently to another child.
So children with diabetes obviously need to attend clinics regularly, and that their medical appointments are put down as medical appointments and don't go against the attendance.
Nobody is ever to blame for a decision, because There is no black or white way to make a decision with a child with diabetes.
Hi, thanks for joining us, and I hope you found that film helpful, and I hope you've been enjoying all the sessions so far. I am here meant to be joined by Heather Jackson. I am conscious I'm the only one on screen at the moment, so Heather, if you're out there, do feel free to put on your camera, and if the team could spotlight Heather. But just while we're waiting, because I know Heather is out there somewhere because we've been chatting in the background. So just to give you a little bit of background about Heather. Heather is a business owner, and she is a mum with two young sons, and one of her sons was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2019. Some of you may know Heather from, she's on Instagram, and she's very passionate about supporting families and young people and parents who are on this type 1 journey. So at the end of this session, I'm sure on the chat we can share her details. Do take a follow. Thanks so much for joining us, Heather. I'll just give you time to settle. So I was just explaining to everyone that you're a mum of two young boys. One was diagnosed with type 1 in 2019. You're also a business owner. You're, like many parents out there, busy. You're passionate about supporting families and parents on this type 1 journey. And I know we've heard lots of, great information so far, and hearing about, standardized care, but keeping it individualized, which I really liked. But also hearing from Katie and Luke, and, that nursery to primary. Both you and I have young children with type 1 in primary school, and I guess it'd be lovely to hear sort of a part of your story. And I know there's lots to talk about, but you mentioned to me that you changed school, so if you wouldn't mind saying a little bit about yourself and how you found that process, because obviously all new. So I'll stop talking and give you a chance.
No problem. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. Yeah, my son was diagnosed just after his 3rd birthday in 2019. So we've been through the nursery setting and reception. He's currently 7 going on 8. So we've had year 1 and year 2, and he's now in year 3 at school. The first few years of primary school, obviously with the pandemic, were quite stop and start and on and off. So it was quite tricky. But then in 2022, we made the decision to move schools. And yeah, it's been a largely positive experience, really, from start to finish, and continues to be so. We have a good school setting, great staff, very engaged, very open to development, which I think is really one of the key things to think about if you are changing schools, whether that be moving area or just making a decision to not be in the school setting that you're currently in and changing over. So I was thinking about what made it a good kind of transition. I think that's kind of what we were thinking about talking about. And I guess it kind of echoes a lot of the things that Luke and Katie were talking about, and a lot of the things that Jenny and Maddie and Campbell were talking about as well. I think as parents of children with type 1, excuse me, we can get quite bogged down in the details. And I think a big learning for me was learning to simplify it. Yeah,
hard,
learning to do that, really hard. Because obviously it's a very scary experience, handing the care over to somebody else, even if it's I kind of knew that it would be okay, but it didn't stop it from feeling very overwhelming. And I had many crises of confidence, I guess, along the way around, are we doing the right thing moving schools? What are we, how is this going to go? What if it's the wrong decision? And all of those things that kind of sit over here, and the noise that it creates. So yeah, the things that helped us were, I met with the head teacher and the class teacher and the support staff, the LSA or the teaching assistant that was going to be assigned to caring for my son. And then also I asked the school to think about any other support staff that they thought would be useful in training. So in the end, the school, we ended up with, I think it was probably around 18 people in the room, actually. It was almost the entire school body. The hospital team came in, and they did a very basic and good foundational style kind of info session. But also what I think was really helpful was the hospital team were very engaged in expressing to the school how the parent, especially because my son at this stage didn't have any independence within his care whatsoever. So I'm aware it's a little different when the children get older, but at this point, he wasn't doing anything himself. And all the insulin administration, finger pricks, everything to do with the care was done by me. And so the hospital, were really good at expressing that kind of parents tend to be the experts in their child, and whilst and again sort of echoing some of the things that I've already said, like it's not the same in every child. The school we moved to had one other type 1 diabetic child, but they were managed on different technology in a very different way. And I often remember one of the teachers saying to me, "Oh, the healthcare plans are not the same." And I was like, yeah, it really does need to be individualized. But it was really helpful from the get-go to communicate that to the staff and the teachers, and express that this is it's going to be a massive learning for everyone. It's a big learning experience. So alongside the really good foundational level stuff that the healthcare plan can provide, and it's a really good learning document and a tool and all of those things, there's also another thing that I think I wanted to express, which was communication, clear, fluid, regular communication. And again, it kind of echoes things that have been said previously. But it was really good to say, this is those two things together are going to make this experience the best for everybody, including the child. And one of the things that I sort of asked the school, and again, we did have a good experience in the sense that the school were very open to kind of learning and doing all of these things. I asked for, within the first term, so from September to December, I asked for a kind of monthly meeting at the end with the class teacher and the LSA to talk about what was going well, what wasn't going well, what could be done differently. One of the things that we use in the classroom that I think works really well is, obviously my son is on an Omnipod and a Dexcom G6, and the Dexcom G6 is attached to obviously a phone. So whilst it is a medical device, it's obviously is also a phone that you can communicate through. So the LSA carries that on her person in a bag, and obviously the phone is programmed to beep when action needs to be taken. So and one of the things that I think is really important to express to schools, especially when changing schools, is that the the healthcare plan cannot possibly reflect all of the potential outcomes. In terms of a kind of, you'd be writing someone a thesis every day, or you'd be changing the healthcare plan every single day.
We had a situation like that yesterday. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
You're kind of, you know, our previous experience was, you know, every time we changed something, that had to be reflected in a document, and actually it makes it a really admin heavy task for everybody involved. Yeah. So what the phone sort of enables, really, in terms of that communication, that fluidity, is that you know, if the healthcare plan is not reflecting what is happening on the ground, which often it doesn't, or it can't, it's just not possible all the time, the LSA has kind of a direct line to the parent. So our LSA will text and say, hi, this has happened, should we do this, should we do this? And it's just checking in, or if something doesn't feel right, she'll just be able to just check in with me really easily and quickly and effectively, and it has the least impact on the wider classroom, on the child, on the teachers, on the parent. There's all these kind of benefits to it. And whilst I appreciate some schools have policies around phones in the classrooms or communications, ultimately we always referred to the phone as a medical device. We always refer to it as an aid to those medical devices. You know, the teacher or the LSA are not using it to kind of chat to me all day. You know, we're just using it in the instances where, and it enables the diabetes to be managed more effectively within the classroom. And the big key to that, which is the one thing I wanted to express today, was the better it is managed from a teacher's perspective, from a school's perspective, the better access to education that child has within the classroom. You know, that child, if they are having real difficulty managing that with fluctuating levels and things, that child is not accessing the curriculum in the same way that other children are in that classroom. And I echo what Fiona Campbell said around all those children having varying different needs. And so trying to make the type 1 care within the classroom as simple and as effective as possible. And I think that was some of the learnings when we changed schools. That was kind of how I went into these, rather than, I think the first time we were at school, I went in with kind of all the information and all the kind of thesis level, you know, this is everything you need to know about everything. And actually, when we moved schools, we simplified it. And then I made it very clear that the extra steps that need to be taken are about helping the child access education and have access to the curriculum in the same way as their peers do.
Oh, Heather, that is just brilliant. I mean, I think our time is, I can't believe it, because I wanted to ask you loads more questions, but you kind of covered it all beautifully there. And I think, just to sum up exactly what you were saying, that clarity, communication seems to be the thread for everyone. I know we're talking primary school and we're going to move on to secondary, so there'll be more discussion on that. But yeah, I personally, you know, hearing some of these top tips today, again, I mentioned to Luke and Katie, you know, following this, we'll definitely put some of these top tips together, because it's just been, you know, so helpful so far. Heather, I think we have to wrap up. I'm really sorry, because I'd love to chat more. But was there, I mean, if you're all right to stay on, because I can see, sorry, there's Q&A at the bottom, and we'll sort of, you know, type answers on there, if that's okay with you, to Heather, stay on for a little while. That's fab. Thank you so much for joining us today. Lovely. Oh, and thanks for the comments. So we'll go into the Q&A, and I think we're going to be moving on next to the secondary section.
We're going to have a bit of a discussion now with a panel of sort of lived experienced teachers. So teachers who are also living with type 1, either with a child of type 1 or living with it themselves. And yeah, really excited for this discussion today, because we've got quite a bit to cover. And as I found in the last couple of panels, it's just this, it is enormous, isn't it? There's so much we can cover on these schools programs. And I think we probably need to start extending this series significantly to cover the different sections that we've got, but we'll give an overview today. So first of all, I'll just hand over to each of you to do a bit of an introduction of yourself and how you live with type 1 and also your kind of profession and role here. So yes, we start with you, Jon, because you're first on my screen. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Jon. I'm a PE teacher in a secondary school. I've been head of year for 13 years, and I've lived with type 1 diabetes since the age of 5. So yeah, quite a few years without giving away my age.
Thank you, Jon. Okay, over to you, Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise. I'm mum of Millie and also Oliver. Millie is type 1 and has been for 8 years. So we've been through Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and she's now in year 9 in schools. I'm a qualified teacher and I was also a Senko for 6 years, an inclusion manager, worked in specialist and mainstream, and I'm currently an area Senko. So I go round settings for the early years and advise when children have complex needs.
Fantastic advocate in the Leeds area for sure to have on the team. And over to you, Casey.
Hi, I'm Casey. I'm a writer, a type 1 diabetic, and assistant head teacher in a secondary school.
Wow, that's a lot going on there. So thank you, Casey. So thank you all for joining us. So I suppose we're just going to kind of pose some questions to you all and just hear all your kind of responses, really. But you know, I think first of all, we talked to the healthcare professionals this morning about what we should expect from them. But what do you all think we should expect from teachers in schools? What's kind of a reasonable level of support? And again, with the caveat that we are all individual, and we've kind of heard that's definitely been an extremely clear message this morning. But, you know, what's the basic? What should we all, as parents, what does good look like in school, do you think? So I'll start with you, Louise. Yeah.
So I think I can answer this as a parent and a Senko and a teacher, because I've kind of seen it from both sides, and I've seen really good care and really good practice. And there's also been hiccups, both with my staff and with Millie's care. And those hiccups have typically come when communication, I know communication's been talked about a lot already this morning. I've just heard some of the discussions, and that close communication is really, really important. So it's been difficult when we've had situations where parents haven't been contactable in emergency situations, or when a little bit of extra advice has been needed. That then causes anxiety, which then causes tensions, and sometimes relationships can sort of break down. Because I would say for anybody, whether you're a parent of a child with type 1, then there's a lot of anxiety around passing over that care. But also for the teachers, learning support assistants, for anybody who's had that training, it's really nerve-wracking for them as well. And they have that duty of care, and they want to do well for your child. They want to get everything right. So you need to kind of work with them, and when hiccups, there'll be small hiccups. You've kind of got to choose your battles a little bit, because there might be little hiccups. But I think it's about the attitude of that individual. So if you talk to them and you can see that your child's insulin hasn't been delivered. I had a situation myself where that happened, and I arrived and the LSA was in tears. She was so upset. So there was no point in me being angry about that, because that person really cared. And then I had another situation where I ended up having to quote law and go to threaten chair of governors and take it very seriously and be a much more direct and feisty advocate for my child when I was being lied to around care, when I could see that things hadn't been delivered. And then that member of staff, probably from fear, but was not being honest with me. And that had gone on a few times. So I think it's always about trying to see the best, trying to have really open communication. Things like homeschool diaries really help, making sure that that's going to and fro, particularly in primary school. And definitely treating every child and every family as individual, because every child is different in secondary. Some children are very open about their diabetes. Others want to be as invisible as possible and don't want attention drawn to them and their care. So I think it's really working on an individual basis for every child and young person and every family, but making sure communication is really close and positive between both sides.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so I think absolutely communication is definitely key. But what would the school, Jon, just think about that? What would the school and Casey, if I just ask you both and you just answer consecutively, what would the school expect to be providing? What are the kind of what they actually could be providing in terms of good care? You know, just so that parents understand the sort of level that they should be getting from, say, a secondary school. Maybe if we go to, you know, the secondary school is probably quite a good example, because we've talked a little bit about primary schools and it is more, but when the secondary school pupil is managing it themselves, well, what extra support could be there for them?
I think for me, the one of the things is having a key person that parents and carers can be in touch with in the school, and whether that's head of year, whether that's form tutor, whether that's someone in reception or student services, however the school's set up, but that someone that has the understanding of diabetes. And I think it was touched on earlier that just because you've known one person with diabetes before doesn't mean you know it all, because I think anyone that's ever encountered anyone that's lived with diabetes, every day can be different, and you can do exactly the same thing and you can react completely differently on that day. So not from the school's point of view, just the school will give that support, but I think like Louise touched on there, or Louise mentioned there, that communication and communicating in a positive way, and not being afraid if things have gone wrong. Do you know what, as a parent or carer, speak to the school, but help the school understand as well. Like the school should have that basic knowledge. They should know what to do if your child is having a hypo. They should know what to do if your child's blood sugar is high. They should be allowing your child to leave the classroom if they don't want to. Like, I've worked with some diabetic students who are happy having some glucose in the class if they're going low. I've worked with others who are really shy about it. As a PE teacher, I've worked with students who don't like getting changed in the changing room because it might show off their sensor. And I've worked with others who are happy to show it off and happy to talk to students. And so again, it comes with that. Every child is different, and every child can be unique. But yeah, I think working closely with the school and doing it in a constructive, in a positive way, helping the school understand as well, I think is really key.
So yeah, Casey, come to you. Thank you, Jon. Come to you as well. I mean, so practically, what does that kind of look like? What does that care package look like from a deputy head's point of view? What would you?
I think the essential thing is, I think Jon's right. You're not necessarily going to have every member of staff in the school know that child individually. But there do need to be specific key members of staff who do, and also who are good points of communication for parents, but also are the advocate for that child in school. So sometimes you might have a member of staff contact you and say, oh, well, Casey left lesson early today and he wasn't allowed. You need to be the person who goes back and says, well, actually, Casey's a diabetic. He does this, he needs that. And you become the advocate within school. I think where it's often tricky for some students is some students are quite quiet, quite reserved, don't necessarily want to talk about their diabetes. And as staff, we can sometimes just stand off and allow that to happen. And the problem is the moment when they need you to support them, you don't really know anything about them. So you don't know whether they, even to the point of, I would often make a joke with the child about anything. I will make light of it. But some kids with diabetes do not want you to make light of their diabetes in that moment. They need you to take it very seriously with them. So knowing that about them before the critical moment is really important. And I know we've said it again and again, but we're all individuals. Having 2 kids with type 1 diabetes is like having 2 kids called Jack. He tells you nothing else about them. Because literally, they're just 2 diabetics, and the reality is they could be the exact opposite child, and trying to treat one like they're the other will ultimately create really poor support for those kids.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you know, as parents, we see quite a lot, don't we? We see, you know, oh, we had a diabetic here a couple of years ago and they were X like this, and think, yeah, but and it kind of still comes back to that idea of, you know, what package of support. So are we saying then really parents should expect to get at least someone to advocate for their child within the school, a few members of staff that are trained, that they know that they could go to, and a sort of bespoke package of care, really, depending on their needs. So if they need those quiet areas, or they need to access, you know, chill out spaces or whatever that, you know, that some of the children with other disabilities might access, then that might be something that they look at, you know. So it's just looking at the different things that yeah, maybe possible. Okay, so that advocacy seems to be, you know, a really, really big key. But what happens if the child's disengaged? And we know this quite happen, you know, if you're diagnosed with diabetes when you're 12 and you've learned all the freedoms of being, or even worse, maybe 14, I don't know, and you started going out, had your freedom, and it's suddenly diabetes comes and whacks you and takes away a lot of that initially anyway, because you've got to relearn, haven't you, to manage yourself and how you know. So when that happens, and then some young people that disengage, they don't want to have diabetes, they don't want to take insulin, this has become a really tough relationship between the family, the school, and this young person. The family are now probably saying to the school, you need to make sure they're taking the insulin. The young person doesn't want to take the insulin. And the school are probably saying, well, you're the parent, you need to be. So how do we resolve those sort of issues? Like how can that be something that we support families with? And what would you, Louise, how would you kind of approach that in terms of, you know, looking at how we support those families?
I think that's where we need a holistic approach, and sometimes actually going wider than just the school and the family, because providing that there is sort of, if the parents are open and willing, then things like, there's lots of really good cluster support where you can access emotional well-being support, but also through clinic, there's the psychology team as well. So looking at speaking to the nursing team, you know, the school have that on the care plan, they have the child's DSN's details. So it might be that the school speak to the DSN about it, and it might be that you're looking at something like an early help, which is a voluntary plan that which is centered around the family and sets outcomes but works together, and then you can tap into support for that young person. Sometimes it can be smaller than that, so looking at linking the child with peer support, if there's somebody in the school that they can link up with, or if it's a college, then there might be another young person that could maybe link in with them and be an ambassador or a peer support for them, and someone they can talk through that's going through the same lived experience at a similar age group. But I think it's just talking with the family, talking with the young person, and making sure that they feel their feelings are valid, that their feelings and their views are heard, that they're not being judged or criticised for those feelings, that somebody's trying to understand why are they switched off and what can we do to help. We're not trying to tell you off, you're not in trouble. But if you want that child to keep attending and you don't want them to just switch off to school, then there's no point somebody being cross with your parents, being cross with you about and criticising you for not managing your care. It's more about trying to be supportive and understanding and making sure that young person feels heard.
Yeah, I mean, there was quite a bit, Jon, I think we'd spoken before about, thank you, Louise, that's really crucial, you know. We were talking about before about that young person also maybe taking kind of some baby steps towards improving their care. So, you know, we can think about it breaking it right down as parents too, and our expectations as parents. Our expectations are, well, you will go in and take your insulin, you will do this and the other. But when that's not happening, what can we do to put some safeguards in place, really? So we'll speak to you and then maybe over to Katie.
So I think, yeah, we were chatting earlier in the week, and I said that I'd actually experienced this where we had a new entrant, and she happened to be we were in a house system then, happened to be put into my house, and she'd newly been diagnosed as diabetic. She'd moved over from Wales, and she was just completely in denial that she was diabetic. Didn't refuse to do injections, refused to test her blood, didn't care about eating, and she hated the fact that she had this condition that I think there was lots of people were telling her it's really going to change your life, and yeah, she was just in complete denial. So we sort of set out some really tiny targets. So I said, right, your job, you've got two tasks each day. So one of them is you come and test your blood sugar, and the other is you give yourself some insulin. And we sort of came up with a deal. So I would go and take her out of lessons for her to do it, and we'd look and go, right, what's the lesson then? And you sort of not rewarding being diabetic, but going, do you know what, let's try and find a benefit to it. So you don't like your maths, come on, I'll take you out of maths if you do it. And I know when sometimes your school approaches that they should be in all lessons doing all this, but for her, actually just getting used to doing it. And then I talked about, actually, do you know what, it's a benefit because you can use your Libra on your phone, so you've got an excuse to have your phone on you. It doesn't mean you can have it out all the time and playing on it, but God, it means you can have your phone on you, and just trying to sort of make it so it's not seen as such a big deal. I think one of the things that we looked at as well was people on social media who were advocates for diabetes, and people who had similar interests. I think sometimes I know when I was young and going on a diabetic camp, I absolutely hated it, because the only thing I had in common with all these other young children was that I was diabetic, and I wasn't in denial of being diabetic, but I just thought, oh, I'm stuck here with all these other diabetics, and I don't want to be here. I don't want to be sort of labelled with them. I want to be my own individual. I want to try and live my life, not have someone saying, right, we're all going to sit down now and test our blood sugars or give ourselves insulin. And just trying to point out, look, there's all these people out there that leading these amazing lifestyles, and they don't have to be celebrities, they don't have to be people in the news every day. It could be someone that's gone on to be successful at any job they've got. It could be someone that's just really enjoying their life. But social media can be, as a teacher, can be an absolute bane of my life, and dealing with stuff. But if you can find the positive role models, the positive influences out there that can help, I think that was really beneficial. But sorry, going back to the main bit was making those small steps and go, right, do you know what, let's try and do one injection a day, and also that knowledge that, do you know what, I'm not going to crack it overnight. I'm not going to suddenly click my fingers, or your mum's not going to somehow manage to get you doing 4 injections a day, but by the next day. And it's those small steps and going, actually, do you know what, it's not so bad giving yourself an injection. There we go. Right, with same time tomorrow, what lesson do you want to take me out? What lesson do you want me to take you out of tomorrow to test your blood sugar? And just try and work with them rather than hammering them for not doing testing their blood and giving themselves their insulin.
Great, thank you very much. That's brilliant, and really helpful, Jon. And Casey, any other reflections on that in terms of what practical, support we can for those young people who are struggling?
Yeah, I think something that Louise touched on around generally kind of mental health care. We do have to be mindful that there is sometimes that need that additional support. So whether it's an early help referral, whether it's a referral to mental health support via Beam or something like Kooth online mental health support, just for often it's a case of children deal with lots of different things, but often if you're really struggling, you don't want to put that burden on your parents, and you don't necessarily think your teachers care, because sometimes they think we're ogres. So having someone to talk to that is separate from all of that, even whether it's just a message online, is really helpful. And kind of piggybacking off the back of what Jon said, I was at a diabetes event last weekend, and I met a guy called Daniel Newman, who's type 1 diabetic, has experienced kind of that denial through secondary school. And I came back into school this week and spoke to a girl who I know struggles with her diabetes and spoke to her about Daniel. And just from that, she's come to seek me out this week to say, so I think I could do some things better, which is great. And I think as parents, often with when anything happens with your child, there's a fear that you're going to become the pushy parent, and so you just accept what the school offers first. So you have students who they have to go to lunch an hour earlier. They don't want to go to lunch an hour earlier because it makes them look different. They don't fit in with their peer group. All of these things. They don't say it to their parents because their parents have gone, well, this is what the school say we need to do, so we're going to do it. They don't say it at school, but they suffer with it. And actually, as a parent, if you go, what are the things that you would like me to tell the school that would support you? And even that idea of going to lunch early is just a really outdated thing, because in the world of technology that we have, actually kids can go to lunch almost when everybody else does and not have a problem. So it's just about communicating, I think being open with your children to say, I will go to the school and say, we need to change this, or we need to do that if you tell me, and really going and advocating. And then as schools, we just need to be good at listening to that and paying attention to it. But yeah, I think what Jon said about making it, having that relationship. So I had a boy who I had to support. He was in my house when I was the head of house, and he would get really angry when he had a hypo. But people would, again, what I said earlier, would try and make light of it, and he didn't like it. So they would call him Grumpy, his name, like Grumpy Jon, and it made him really mad. And I was like, why don't we just stop doing that? Why don't we stop doing that and actually take him seriously? And in time, people got a lot better at going, okay, I can support you. What do you need? And being really serious with him, which a lot of kids wouldn't like. And he was like, okay, let's do this. Let's do that. And he was really serious, but that's just who he was. So knowing that's really important.
That's some brilliant tips there, I think, for parents as well, to really start thinking, Casey, about having those, and it is difficult, but maybe it might be via text. I know that that's probably sounds crazy, but sometimes kids don't want to talk to you, but actually if you text them, they'll text you back. Text me the three things that are really bugging you about school and your diabetes, or anything that's upset, that you'd like me to talk to your school about. I think it is difficult in secondary, isn't it? Because you've not got that sort of same handover, but keeping in touch with young people and getting that advocate in school could be the difference for them of feeling alone and not feeling alone. Speaking about psychology support, so I should say at this point that we have a brand new psychology area on DigiBete that's been developed with thanks to funding from JDRF. And it's all around that early psychology support. So things to do when you're waiting 15 minutes for food, breathing exercises, understanding your threat systems and that kind of thing. So easy things that young people can kind of work through just to sort of, and also things they can do to distract themselves when they are having those moments. And the idea with that being in the DigiBete app is that they should be able to use it in school because we can write it into the care plans. Which is going to be really important. So they've got somewhere that they can actually access. So that bit of work is happening at the moment, and it's happening first for the 10 to 14-year-olds because we know that transition to secondary school is very hard. But I mean, it's hard all round, isn't it? But that's a really tricky age. And then after Christmas, we'll be doing all ages and parents as well for that early psychology support, trying to prevent people from escalating with their sort of psychology needs. It's really tricky though, isn't it? And also there's been lots of chat from young people within the schools environment about how they feel that the mental health is separate to their diabetes. So they'll develop some anxiety issues and then they'll be given some CAM support, but they won't understand the diabetes, and the diabetes, it doesn't necessarily overlap. So it's looking at how we actually bring these things together, acknowledge that diabetes is very stressful. And actually everybody struggles a little bit with it, and how, giving some practical tips really and resources around that. So that's brilliant. So we've got the last sort of few minutes. I think it'd be great really to wrap up with what we think then, if there's any questions coming through, we'll try and answer a couple of those actually as well in the very last 5 minutes. But if there's any top tips you think you could give parents in terms of getting that support in place, especially around secondary school, but also, some of it will apply to primary too. So should we start with you this time, Jon, just to switch it up a bit? What would be in a sort of short 5 top tips you might have for, well, up to 5, you might not have 5, but some parents do. It can be hard for you, Louise, if you're going to be last.
I think getting that that person that as a parent or carer that you can be in contact with, and it doesn't have to be the same person that the child is in contact with. In terms of the child might not have that relationship, but if the parent or carer can go to that member of staff who can communicate with someone else, just making sure that and it has to be a two-way thing as well. So it has to be that it's not just constantly the parent giving the advice or the school saying this has happened. It has to be working together. I think you want the school to understand what the child is going through, and that they are going to have different days, that they are going to have their struggles, and it's not down to the child's, it's not their choice of what's going on. One of the things, I wrote a few things down before, but maybe having a little card, because I think, like we've touched on, sometimes young children don't want to tell staff they're diabetic, and if they're not being allowed out to go to the toilet because their blood sugar's high and they really need the toilet, or they feel they need to leave the class, they're going low, if they've got a cover teacher in or something like that, just having a little, it can be like a credit card size or a note in their planner that they can just show the teacher, because you don't, I mean, I've never encountered a diabetic that wants to put their hand up in front of the class and say, I need to do this because I'm diabetic. But just that reassurance for the parents, carers, for the child, that if anything is going wrong, that they have got that ability to just do it. And also making sure, one of the other things, that if the child is going out because their blood sugar's dropping, that they've got someone going out with them, and the child isn't just left to go out into the corridor, because with the best intentions of the world, when you're in the middle of teaching a class and a child leaves, you can sometimes forget that's the reality. You don't necessarily want to, but if a child's gone out because their blood sugar's dropped and you're in the middle of teaching, or someone's observing you and your mind's just completely focused on that lesson, just making sure that someone's going out with them to either escort them down to reception, to just stand outside while they have a few jelly babies, check their blood sugar goes back up, and yeah, just that extra bit of support.
Thank you, John, and brilliant. Over to you, Casey. Oh, I think you're on mute. Sorry, Casey.
I love to be the person who talks while they're on mute. It's one of my goals in life all time. I think talking to your child about what they need is really important, but not just, I think often we can leave things until there's a problem, and then, you know, in the midst of, or the fallout of the problem, we're trying to unpick what the issue was. So, you know, take your kid to go and have a coffee and sit down and have a nice little, you know, parent and child moment, and go, how are things going with your diabetes care in school? Like, are they doing everything you need? So it shouldn't feel like a high pressured conversation because this happened in school this week, or your teacher called about that, and kind of convey that back to the school. I think the second one is like, I'm not saying be horrible to your children's teachers. I'm one of them. Leave us alone. No, but don't worry about the idea of seen as pushy or doing too much. If you feel like the school needs to know something, let them know. And if you feel like they haven't quite got something right, it's not about an attack and it goes back to what Louise said about when you can tell the ones who really care, and the ones who don't, or the ones who have just made a mistake and don't want to own it. But be clear with them. This is what happened. This is what should have happened. Can we please make sure we get this right in future? Because ultimately, it's my child's care, it's their health. It's really important. Keep the school up to date with changes. So if you know that you're going through a period of time where you're seeing differences at home, just a quick email to say, you know, at the moment, not sure what's going on, but Casey's blood sugars are a bit up and down. He's a little bit out of sorts. Can you just keep an extra eye on him? You know, maybe say, don't talk to him about this because he's not comfortable talking about it, or can someone have a chat with him? Just keep that general flow of communication. And then the last one, I guess, is back to what John said. We can get wrapped up in, you know, they should be in every lesson all the time and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you know it. If we don't get their physical well-being okay, they're not going to learn what they should in those lessons. They're not going to do as well as they should. So as a point one, let's get them feeling physically okay, mentally okay, and then we'll be able to do more when we are teaching them. So yeah, those will be my tips.
Brilliant, Casey. Thank you very much. And Louise.
Yeah, just quickly, apologies that I disappeared briefly. We had a power cut, so I'm now on my phone rather than my laptop. It was quicker to reconnect. I think most of the things have been said. The only thing I would add really is, I think going back to that, I think that card system is really helpful for those children that don't want to talk about things. And sometimes there are other passes that can be really useful. So the lunchtime, if a child's got to pre-bolus, and sometimes in secondary, for young people, the lunch break is only half an hour. So I know we've had situations where by the time she's got her food, she can't pre-bolus for it, and then she's not been able to eat it all. So just things like an early lunch pass, talking to the school about whether they can provide that for your child so they can go out that little bit earlier, is really useful. A toilet pass for the same thing. There can be such strict rules around the use of the toilet, and for children and young people with type 1, sometimes particularly if they're high, they need to go. So a toilet pass is just a useful practical thing. And I know in primary children are often very open to that education of their peers and education about their condition, and that often shifts in high school. But it might be if there is a young person that is particularly private about their care, then it might be that there's one friend who is in most of their, or somebody that's in most of their sets with them, most of their groupings with them, that they really feel they can trust, that perhaps they would be happy for them to understand it, so they can speak up for them if they can notice changes, or they're not feeling well but they're not brave enough to kind of say, I need some help. Then maybe that peer support can continue, but on a much more discreet level than potentially it might do in primary. And I think the other thing, Casey talked about it as well, is those conversations with your child or young person. So I think if there is a mistake or something's happened, then it's empowering for them if you say to them, okay, so what's happened? So making sure that they feel they can talk to you and they can tell you about how things are and when things are difficult or not working for them, but also talking to them about, so how are we going to work on this then, rather than going in the way that you think it should be dealt with, maybe including the child or young person and saying, so what do you think we need to do? Then I can go in and talk to them, or what would you like me to do? I can do a letter. And sometimes you have to just say, actually, this isn't okay, and I need to talk to them about it, and just make sure they're understanding the care plan and understanding that these things need to be in place. But there might be smaller things that are happening where you can just empower the young person with deciding together how you're going to approach that with the school and how you're going to try to improve that situation.
Thank you, Louise. That's really, very thoughtful, all of them. And I think there's some really good kind of nuggets there for us all as families to sort of take away. I think that it feels to me like the overarching themes have been really that it's very individual. Advocacy is so important. Us as parents play a big role in initiating the advocacy, but actually, how can we pass the baton on and, to someone in school who can be that champion for the young person, but also look at the peer support as well. Certainly something that we've experienced when we've done our filming is when young people have talked about who their buddy is, in school. And we had a very funny experience where this young person's buddy, they called them Jobworth or something, because basically she was so on the diabetes, but she was a brilliant friend, and they had a really good banter between them. And I thought, wow, that is so powerful, because that's probably making a huge difference. And the young person, the buddy, loved it. She loved that responsibility, So obviously not for everybody, but there will be peer support available, for some of those young people as well. And then really looking at how the system can support you as well, and not being afraid as parents, because even though they've gone to secondary school, and even though it is bigger, and they are still children, aren't they? They are still, at that age, they, especially 11, 12, they need still need that guidance, and they still need to know where to go. And moving around school can be very, very scary at that age when you've got all the kit to carry and everything else. So maybe looking at that daily routine with a young person as well, and what does that look like in practice? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Have a bit of a planning session. But a big thank you for all your experience. I think it's there's a lot sort of to take away. I suppose, is there anything else that you would like to contribute or reflect on before we close today, or are you kind of happy? You think we've said everything we need to? Is we can maybe take one question if I can just look at the Q&A quickly. So there's a question that says, again about the ECHPs. I'll just direct that over to you, Louise, because I know you've got a lot of experience. I think that we haven't covered that, and actually it would be good just to close on that. So just give us your overview thinking on ECHP and
yeah, so I can't, because I'm on my phone, I can't see the chat function, so I'm not sure what the question was around EHCPs, but education healthcare plans are the law, that they are legally binding provision. So if there is an education healthcare plan in place, then the provision that's in that the child needs becomes legally binding. However, that said, and in a lot of authorities, you need an education healthcare plan in order to get funding for your child. So in the early years where you do need that additional adult support, then there is an argument for an education healthcare plan in order for the schools to have the funding in order to support the child. Although when the child gets older, sort of Key Stage 2 and into secondary, they wouldn't get the funding anyway. So there are arguments about what an education healthcare plan will offer that is over and above the legal responsibilities under the Equality Act and the Code of Practice, which is that reasonable adjustments have to be made for every child. So the law already protects your child, that healthcare plan has to be followed, that they need those reasonable adjustments. So if I'm honest, as a kind of parent of a type 1 and as a SENCO, I've never considered an education healthcare plan for my daughter, because I know that the law, it wouldn't make much difference to the provision or the expected level of care. But I know that other people feel very differently. And I also am in an authority that in the early years, the funding and the EHCP don't go hand in hand anyway. So in those early years foundation stage where a child can receive funding, at that point, the education healthcare plan in my authority doesn't make a difference. But I know in a lot of authorities it does. So it's quite a grey area. Technically, I've sat on both sides of the panels. I've sat on the panel with parents who have applied for EHCPs in a SENCO capacity, supporting them to get an EHCP. And I've sat on the other side for a variety of needs. And usually what the educational psychologists and the casework officers will talk about is that the education part is the first bit. And as much as we know that if a child is hypo or hyperglycemic, it affects their ability to learn, to process learning, to process information. If the care plan is in place and the care is good, then usually they should be able to access those things. So it's a really tricky one. But generally, I think it's rare that children and young people get an EHCP for type 1 diabetes alone.
That's interesting, because I think in some areas they are getting them, aren't they? So it is very grey and it's very patchy across the country. And again, I think it comes back to that individualized, for some young people who have other difficulties as well. They might have autism and diabetes, they might have other, we have to think about those cases on an individual basis. Are they disengaging with care, and do they have other things that we need to consider? So it's a great question. I think it's probably something we are doing quite a lot of work with the National Diabetes Network at the moment, and looking at what support and information we can put together for parents. So there's a bit more for them to kind of look at, and to look at how and whether this is an important aspect for their child, depending on where they live, and like you say, how the funding works and whatever else. So it's not the answer to everything, but it might be the answer to fun for some people. So it's worth kind of keeping that kind of balance for you, isn't it? But big thank you, Louise, for your thinking on that. I think we're just coming to a close. Is there anything, Jon or Casey, you want to add to that? And if not, we'll wrap up.
The only other thing I was going to add, I completely forgot to say, having a box of hypo sort of backup in reception or somewhere, just making sure that there's that sort of peace of mind for the staff and students. If the blood sugar does drop and you've run out of whatever you might have, or you've left them at home, or you can't locate them in your bag, right, I need to have something. I can go down to reception and they've got a tub of cereal bars and like jelly babies, whatever's there. But I think that's quite an important thing.
A great
just remember
practical
that.
tip. A great practical tip to leave us on there, Jon. Thanks so much, and really rich conversation. So a big thank you to you all, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Casey, Louise, Jon and Maddie, for such an incredible, thought-provoking conversation there, as well as Tom for the brilliant quickfire Q&A video before. It's wonderful. It really is wonderful to get a teacher's perspective. So we really appreciate your time and insight into that topic. In just a few minutes, we're going to have another short comfort break. But first, we're going to hear from a couple more tech partners, the first being Jessica from Dexcom. Thanks so much to Dexcom for your continued support. We're now going to move on to our next speaker, who will be Candice from Camdiab. Welcome, Candice.
Hi, thank you very much. And thank you so much for organising this just amazing event and giving us the opportunity to be involved. My name is Candice Ward. I am the training manager for Camdiab. We have created the CamAPS FX closed loop system. That is the world's first app that's integrated in a mobile phone that links with two different pumps, the Dana and the MyLife Ipso, and links with the Dexcom G6 at the moment and soon G7 in the future, and the Libre 3. I'd like to just play a little animation to just explain a little bit more about the app for you, but thank you again for your time and involvement.
Every day with type 1 diabetes is different, but CamAPS FX can make living with diabetes easier. CamAPS FX is an easy to set up and use, sophisticated app which works seamlessly with your glucose sensor and insulin pump to continually administer your optimal dose of insulin 24 hours a day. The app has been rigorously tested across all life stages. Users are able to manage their glucose levels day and night, so they feel less burdened by their diabetes and more able to lead full and spontaneous lives. You can set up personal targets to reflect your individual needs and use the boost functions when more insulin is required, like when glucose is running high. The ease off function is also there when you need to reduce the insulin you receive, like when active. Parents and carers can also have peace of mind through discreet remote monitoring of their loved ones. And you can bolus in public with complete discretion. CAM-APS FX, helping people with type 1 diabetes live their lives to the full.
Hi everybody, I'm Claire from Airliquide and we are distributor for the tandem T-Slim pump in the UK. So I'm just going to take you through a very few short slides. So the tandem pump is manufactured in the US. It can be used as a standalone pump or it can be linked up to the Dexcom G6 to give extra functionality. So there are two different versions. So the first one is the basal IQ, which just suspends if the person is predicted to go low. And then we have the control IQ, which is the full hybrid closed loop that so many of you are hearing about. So some of the key features, it's the pump that gets updated and not outdated. So during your 4-year warranty period of your pump, you can update it like you update your phone. So like you update the iOS on your phone, you can just update the pump. So you're always left with the latest technology. So a few different features. It has a rechargeable battery. It's got a really intuitive color touch screen. We have the little micro USB port there for charging, a range of different infusion sets. It's watertight, so don't swim in the pump, but if you drop it down the loo, it will survive, it will be fine. And we have built-in Bluetooth ready for when our phone app becomes available once we get our CE mark. It's really small and discreet. You can hide it behind a credit card. Its innovative cartridge design will hold up to 300 units of insulin. And we have our demo app available. So this is in Apple and Android. You can download this. You can practice playing with all of the different screens in the pump, including the bolus calculator. So you can actually physically add up your carbs on the screen rather than from adding them up in your head. The Control IQ technology is designed to keep you within a range of 3.9 to 10 at all times and will continually adjust that insulin every 5 minutes if required. You have the flexibility to disconnect should you wish. And if you wish to find out more, of course, you can pop some questions in the chat. We have our Making Diabetes Easier website, and we're also on Twitter, although it's probably, I think it's called something different these days. And you can also follow us on Instagram. And that's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Claire, for being here and for Airliquide's continued support. We're now going to move on to our next speaker, who will be Deborah from Abbott. Welcome, Deborah.
Freestyle Libre 3 is a real-time CGM that is a standalone system used with the Freestyle Libre 3 app. But now we have minute-to-minute glucose readings combined with the MyLife Loop automated insulin delivery system for easier diabetes management. With the Freestyle Libre sensor, so the system, the MyLife Loop system consists of the MyLife Cam app and the MyLife Ipso pump for automated insulin delivery. And now with the use of the Freestyle Libre 3 system, delivering minute-to-minute glucose readings to the Cam app, and then the Cam app sharing that information with the Ipso pump. So Freestyle Libre 3 is minute-to-minute streaming to the app. It's a 14-day wear. The Bluetooth connection range is 10 meters, so 33 feet. So it does have a very strong Bluetooth range as well. And with this collaboration with the MyLife Loop, provides patients with automatic adjustment of insulin delivery based on Freestyle Libre 3 sensor readings to prevent low and high glucose levels. It provides discrete and convenient remote bolus delivery from compatible smartphone and convenient bolus suggestion calculations based on the the continuous glucose readings from the sensor. And you can learn more at the website there on the screen. And in summary, then the Freestyle Libre 3 sensor is a next generation CGM designed to fit into patients' lives. It's the most accurate CGM with glucose readings sent minute by minute. to smartphone. It's the world's smallest, thinnest, and most discreet sensor. It's a 14-day wear and with the strongest, most reliable CGM connection. So if you are looking for more information about Libre 3, do ask your specialist care team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. We're now going to be moving on to our next set of speakers. We will be listening to a pre-recorded conversation with Sam from DigiBete, as well as Choi and Jasmine, who are going to discuss preparing the move into university halls. In fact, they're actually moving into halls as we speak, so can't actually join us on the call today. But any questions that you may have for them, we'll do our best to answer in the Q&A section.
Hi, yes, so I'm here with Choi and Jasmine, and we're going to talk about experiences of managing type 1 when going off to university. As well as being part of the DigiBete team, I'm also mum to Lily, who went to university 2 years ago. So we're going to have a little chat about Choi and Jasmine's preparation for uni and our experience of Lily going to university as well. So Choi and Jasmine, if you'd like to just give a quick introduction.
Yeah, I'm Choi, mum to Jasmine, and it's really more about her really. So
I'm Jasmine, so I'm 18. I was diagnosed type 1 diabetic when I was 14. And yeah, I've been living away from home, so I'm just getting stuff ready for uni in September.
Fabulous, and congratulations on getting the place that you wanted at university. It's very exciting, but there's also a little bit of preparation to do, isn't there? So we all feel happy and prepared for going. So if I can first sort of ask you what sort of concerns were you concerned about anything going to university?
I think the biggest thing is that my school was only 20 minutes away from home, so if anything did happen, firstly I could share my Dexcom. I use Dexcom G6, so through the Follow app, Mum can see my bloods from afar when I don't switch her on.
Yeah.
But if anything happened or if I needed anything, she was only ever 20 minutes away, so it was never particularly far.
No, and I think the thing is, I mean, Jazz was in a boarding school, but she came home every weekend. So I got to look her in the whites of the eyes and see that she was actually all right, every weekend. And as I said, she was only 20 minutes away. So, if anything, there have been times when she forgot her insulin, so I've been able to just get it to her. So yes, she's been away, but she sort of hasn't. Maybe she's been away in the week having a sleepover type thing, as opposed to being away.
Yeah. So I guess going to university is slightly different. You're going to be a little bit further away and probably a lot more independent. I guess you've been independent already going to boarding school to a certain degree. Does it feel any different going to university?
I think another big thing is like sorting out my prescriptions and my pharmacy, finding where the nearest one is and trialing it out. So this week I just ordered a test prescription to the nearest pharmacy to where my halls were. Yeah. But it's like going through the process of actually, okay, what do I need? I need to be on top of it and order it before it runs out, because it takes 10 days or so for it to get through to the pharmacy. And it's just like, that's another thing on my mind, which I need to be thinking about on top of uni work going forward, just making sure I don't neglect that.
Yeah, so I've got older children as well, and they've gone to uni, and we didn't go up till the day, drop them off and whatever. But with Jazz, we felt that once we booked her accommodation, my husband and I, we went up with her for the day to work out, this is your accommodation, where's your nearest pharmacy, supermarket, stuff like that. Just do a recce. Right, this is how you're going to get here, there. You get the bus, or you can walk. In terms of like if you're low, you may want to take the bus. Those sorts of things, which I didn't feel the need to do so much with my other kids, my older ones, because it's like, well, they can sort it out. Actually, that's what uni's all about. But there was a little bit more, I'd say, hand holding. Just for my peace of mind as well as for Jasmine, just so that it's not like, what do I do? So we went that for me, it was a really big reassurance, actually, going to the pharmacy, talking to the pharmacists, and they're like, yes, we can do this, So we've done a test, just yesterday we all did it.
Yeah, that
so
is a
that
great idea.
when we go up on Saturday, we can pop in the pharmacy and pick it up, and it's for me to be like, okay, and also for Jasmine to know this is what I need to do.
Yeah. So just for other people listening, is that you've decided to stay with your own GP and you've just changed the pharmacy where you're going to pick up your prescriptions, or have you changed your GP to be near uni?
So because my specialist team is in Bucks, I've decided it makes more sense, I think, to just stay down here, because Birmingham isn't really far away from home, so it's quite easy for me to get back.
Yeah.
I think it's just simpler because the team already know me, they already know my history. So,
yeah, we kept the care. We want to keep the same diabetes team because we went through transition, and it's taken about 18 months or so to get to know the team, and how it all works in the sort of adult clinic, and then it seems such a shame to sort of then have to start all over again. When you begin to see the doctor that the consultant that you're going to see all the time and stuff like that. So we felt, and we're really pleased with our care. So that's the other thing. It's like, well, ain't broke, don't change it, kind of thing. Yeah. And also, I've been on some forums. There's a Facebook Type 1 Uni forum or something. Yeah, which has sort of been quite helpful, but sometimes I have to not look at it because it's also quite scary. It's that managing that sort of knowing enough but not too much that it's too frightening. And I've read a lot of people have said that if you have got funding for certain things, if you change your GP, then your funding for your Dexcom changes. I just didn't want to go through that whole hassle again.
Yeah, it would be very wise to check if you are going to change your care to where your university is, check the funding. So I think, that's something for people to have a think about, isn't it, in advance. But yeah, like you say, if you're happy with your care, I think most teams are very happy for you to stay with them and liaise with them about appointments in holiday time and things like that. So yeah, that works well for us as well. Lily decided to keep her care in Leeds. We did transfer GP to the student practice because that's what the university recommended. But actually, we ended up changing back the GP. Easier to manage prescriptions from the home. GP, we're used to it. But she just changed where she picks up her prescriptions to be in York. So, that is available mostly online, I think, these days. I
think I use the patient access app.
Yeah. And you can change your pharmacy. And so when you're back at home, you can switch it back again, can't you? So it's quite easy to manage from that perspective. But I would suggest as well to anybody going away for the first time that you do take plenty of supplies with you. Don't go, in case there are those little blips or things to sort out. So have a couple of months worth of supplies of things, I'd say, as well.
Yeah, and I think also I read, I have some friends who are GPs, and there's this new thing called the right to choose or something. So you can just go into, if you're at uni, for Jazz, she's like, well, what if I have an illness or whatever? And I said, well, you just go in and register there as a temporary patient.
Yes, yeah. So I think that's always an option, to go into the nearest GP and say, I just need immediate care. I'm not with this practice, but I'm here studying. So I think they can take you on and see you in that capacity. So it's just, the young people knowing these things. While we're on the subject of prescriptions and things, I think it's also worth knowing that you need a medical exemption form when you're 19 and above. So you need to apply for that form to continue with your free prescriptions. I think that's in England. I think the other nations, they continue with free prescriptions anyway, but you do need that medical exemption certificate. So I think some teams sort of talk through that in transition as well and help you sort of apply for that. But it's just one form that you fill in at the doctors, I think, and they send it off, and then you've got your medical exemption if ever the pharmacy asked for it. So if you were picking up at a new pharmacy and they weren't familiar with you, they may ask you for your medical exemption card. So that's just something else. I think it's from the age of 19. But it's not something that's always obvious. So
The other thing is, so I've been filling out my DSA, my disability student allowance thing. So Birmingham were very on top of it, and they got in touch with it way before I got my results. So I had lots of student service calls and also organising what sort of equipment I need and how the uni can support me. So I've been fortunate enough to receive funding. Initially, they gave me like a locker box, like a lockable box unit to put in the fridge. But then actually, you can lift out the whole box and take it out the fridge. So I said, well, actually, I think I need an actual lockable fridge, which can't be moved, to keep in my room. So they've been really good, and they've given me this big fridge. But I now have a lockable fridge to keep my medication in my room.
Yeah,
which I can keep safe.
I think most DSA assessors will approve a mini fridge, or sometimes the unis do provide them in the rooms for students that need them for medication. So again, keep in touch with the uni that you've chosen. But if you're going through clearing, I guess that's a bit different. It's all a bit more rushed if you don't know where you're going and what your accommodation is going to be. But if you tick that disability box on your UCAS form and be in touch like you have with the disability services in advance, you'll find that they are quite supportive, hopefully. So yeah,
they've also given me like some online resources so if I need to leave a lecture to sort out my blood sugars, I can record it. So the one they've given me is Glean, and I think it's that I can leave it recording and I can type notes on the side. But then if I need to leave a lecture for whatever reason, I can leave my stuff there and the lecture will still be recorded, but then I can go sort out my bloods and come back and then listen back to it later or another time. But I think a lot of unis are recording lectures now because of COVID, so that's not so much of a...
Yeah, I think my daughter found the same. She was given the software, but actually it's worked out that she can usually watch her lectures back anyway, but that may gradually change over time, I'm not sure. So yeah, it's worth knowing, and it's worth having that DSA interview and assessment, because they do identify how you learn as well, how you best learn. So my daughter was given a printer because she felt that she was best learning sort of printing things off rather than online all the time. So they approved a printer for her. So there'll be different things that come out in the interview. They'll know, how to draw out what you need, basically. So yeah, do apply for those well in advance of going, because I think it can sometimes take a few months to sort out, can't it?
Another thing is like attendance. So they've given me permission to, like, if I need to miss, because hospital appointments in adult clinics are very random and you sort of have to go as soon as you get your appointment time. I'm allowed to miss lectures and stuff to make those appointments, and my lecturers are aware of that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. And some teams will sort of try and arrange appointments in holiday time, I think, as well. So yeah, worth having those conversations. And like things like attendance, if you had a bad hypo through the night or whatever and you couldn't get up in the morning, kind of thing, it's having that reassurance that you've had those discussions and there's things in place. Exam extensions as well, in case you were, in case you had blood sugar problems during exams and things like that. So yeah, get all that in place, and then you can relax and do the fun stuff at uni, can't you? Like
too much fun.
Yeah,
making new friends is all right.
Yeah.
I think another thing which is important is to have a medical ID, especially for Freshers Week, just in case these people are all new, they don't know you, or if you end up for whatever reason in an unfortunate state, at least, and the paramedics are there, at least they know that you're type 1 diabetic.
Exactly.
So I have I'm not wearing it right now, but I have a band just on my wrist, and it just says type 1 diabetic, and I also have a necklace with my name. And
you never wear that. I spent a fortune on it. She never wears it.
It's a really good idea, though, and it's good. It's good that you recognise that, Jasmine. It is, always important to be safe, because you just never know, do you? But yeah, I think my daughter was a bit reluctant to tell people about living with type 1. But then, the more comfortable she's got with her flatmates, and that she very much realises they want to help if they can. So do tell, as soon as you're comfortable, do tell your flatmates, do share that, and some basic knowledge of, if I'm a bit unresponsive or whatever, or a bit out of it, I might need, some Lucozade or something like that, that kind of thing.
I mean, Jazz and I did have a conversation with you about, well, have you thought about how, when you arrive at uni, you want to make it known to people or not? So I planted that seed a couple of months ago. Like, how do you want to handle it? I haven't had any feedback on how she wants to handle it, but
I think I'll just play it.
It's very much in the moment, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's how you feel in that moment. So my daughter was, although she didn't really want to go out and advertise it and say, hey, everyone, I'm Lily, I'm type 1 diabetic. Nobody really wants to do that, do they? But actually, on the first night there in halls, they were all outside gathering for, meet and greet kind of thing. And they were, she found in common that somebody with a Libra, somebody with a Dexcom, somebody and they just then all automatically were like, hey, I've got type 1 too. And so sometimes it happens organically, doesn't it? But yeah, the people that you're definitely living with and close with, it's a good idea to let them know, really.
I'm also, I've decided to be self-catered. So I'm going to be cooking my own meals just because for me, it's easier to carb count. I like cooking, so it's not really a problem.
That's great that you like cooking, and for a lot of people, it'll be their first experience of cooking for themselves, maybe. I know my daughter. She never cooked at home, so I was a bit like, are you sure you're going to manage this? Are you sure you don't want me to write you down some recipes? That kind of thing. There are some good recipes in the DigiBete app that are cook along and carb counted, so you can open up your app in the kitchen and follow along a nice spaghetti bolognese, something like that. There's lots of different cook along recipes in the app, so have a look at that. But she did actually take to it quite well, and the only thing that she was that took her a bit of time to get used to was putting the carbs in 15 minutes before she's going to eat, because she was too busy cooking, she'd forget. And she was like, you always used to shout up the carbs to me. Like when I'm cooking, put your carbs in, Lily. It's getting used to like knowing I need to put my carbs in while I'm cooking. So yeah.
I think another thing is, so if you are going to be catered and not cook your own meal, is see if you can find like a menu or a plan so that you can, at school, there was like, they provided the meals, so like I would ask for the week meal in advance so that in lessons or in lectures I could give myself enough time to
That's great, isn't it, when you've got that structure and you can sort of plan. Yeah. That's a good idea. Brilliant. So any other sort of areas of concern or prepping that you did? Or I think we've covered most things, haven't we? The most important thing is to enjoy the experience. And if you've done all the planning and prepping, then it's less stressful when you get there, isn't it? And it sounds like you guys have done so much planning and prep, and you're very organised. And so hopefully you will.
I don't know. There's always something that's missed. I don't think you can. I think you can't. You can't prep for everything, and you've just got to live life at the end of the day. Yeah. But you're right. I think for me, it's been. I mean, I did a lot of the stuff when Jasmine was actually putting in her UCAS application. So in the low sit, I just read everything I could about alcohol intake, how to deal with that, sort of DSA stuff. I just so that I could prepare myself to know what conversations to have. Because obviously during the A levels, it's really quite stressful. There's a lot of work and stuff. Do you know what I mean? That they're stressed, and I don't want to stress her. But
trying to take that away from them.
Yeah, at the right time to be able to have those conversations about, have you thought of this, or how do you want to handle this, or you've got to be aware. Sorry, someone's cutting the hedge now.
Don't worry.
So in my heart preparation, I guess I did a fair bit. But there will be the moments when it's like you get the phone call or whatever going, and that's okay.
Do you have any concerns about middle of the night hypos, and do you carry a glucagon pen or a gluo?
So I've been fortunate that I've never had like a severe hypo. So I've never had to be treated as such, but there are times when like I don't hear my Dexcom low alarm, and Mum will come into my room and be like, Jasmine, you need to wake up.
Yeah, so one of the things that I have read about and that I think we're trying to get is sort out is a phone. So I read someone has another phone that's always plugged in by their bedside with our home number plugged in, so anyone can ring it. It's got screen lock or anything on, so anyone can just access it.
Yeah.
And it's always charged, and I can ring it and it's on full volume, and hopefully
that's a great idea.
It's almost like the alternative SOS line, not your normal phone, because that might be out of charge or
I can say, yeah, it's a great idea, that, and there's other ways of doing it as well. I think there's something, if you have iPhones, there's a Find My Phone option that you can send an alarm to, even if the phone's on silent. So yeah, that idea of plugging the phone in and keeping it there is a great one. But yeah, on some of these forums, there's other great ideas as well. So whatever works for you. I've heard of people taking an Alexa and you can shout down, Alexa, you know, wake up kind of thing. I'm not sure how exactly some of these things work, but there are ways and means. It was definitely one of my big fears was, you know, not being able to get in touch if you're getting those low alarms. And it did happen to us one time with Lily. I tried to get in touch with her for about 20 minutes. It was just reading low. She wasn't answering the phone in the middle of the night. I knew she'd been out drinking. So the husband set off driving to York, got about halfway there, and then she finally got in touch and was like, sorry, yeah, I'm really low, but I'm okay. So then he turned back. But it's those moments that you think, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for, and it's happened. But she was okay. But yeah, since then we requested the new sort of EpiPen style glucagon pen that is becoming available, I think. So the young adult team were very happy for us to have that, because it gave us peace of mind that anyone can use it quite simply. The glucagon is quite tricky, isn't it? And you wouldn't want your friends to be in that situation where they think they might have to use that. So something a bit more simpler that doesn't have to be kept in the fridge as well. So yeah, that's something that's given me huge peace of mind.
I think being aware of how different alcohols and alcohol in general affects you. I mean, it's different for everybody, but like I find like lower percentages and more sugary, so they'll go up and you might inject, but actually your liver prioritizes the alcohol breakdown as opposed to the glucagon breakdown. So then later on, you then go low. So just make sure you eat carbs before you go to bed, especially after a night out. I think that was really
brilliant advice.
I'm glad you know that.
Yes, exactly. She knows what she's doing. She's going to be absolutely fine. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for speaking to us about your experiences. Hopefully it's helpful to other people preparing or thinking about university. And most of all, Jasmine, have an amazing experience. I'm sure you'll do very well, but also enjoy it. Thank you for speaking to us today.
Pleasure.
About 20 minutes.
Oh, I'm sure we can all agree that both Choi and Jasmine gave some brilliant insight there around managing type 1 throughout the transition into university. Thank you, Sam, for facilitating that conversation as well. So for the next 5 minutes or so, I'm conscious of the time, I'm going to hand over to Maddie to tell us a little more about what resources DigiBete have to offer.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm going to whiz through this because we have had such a rich lot of conversations this morning, and I'm sure everybody is ready to finish. But just to very quickly say that we've got a comprehensive platform and app available to you, supported by the NHS. So it's funded centrally by NHS England, Scotland, Wales, for you to use, and also we're now Northern Ireland as well are starting to take it on too. So just to say, you know, there's lots of resources on schools on there. You'll see on the homepage, you can see a little backpack. That's the button you press for schools, and you'll choose whether you need key stage 1 and 2, 3 and 4, or preschool. Just a very quick reminder of what the DigiBete app does, in case you haven't downloaded it or you haven't seen it for a while.
Once you've set up your DigiBete app, you're ready to use it, and it will help support you with essential information to help you manage type 1 diabetes. The homepage has lots of different areas for you to explore. There are top tips to help manage blood glucose levels. There are films to watch, and you can favourite the ones you like, and they will appear on your homepage, making it easier to access. You can access all your clinic's information on the My Clinic area, including team members, contact details, useful documents and links. There is an age area where you can learn about type 1 and support your emotional well-being and all the things you need to know for your age, as well as a quiz area, so you can test your knowledge after watching the videos. You can receive updates from DigiBete and your clinic in the news area, and there is an awards section which shows your progress through the app. A searchable dictionary is also available in case you need to find out what something means. By clicking the button in the middle of the home screen, you'll have access to essential care videos. And by clicking the play button at the bottom of the screen, you'll have access to diabetes tech guides and information pages, carb-counted recipes that you can try at home, information on managing food around cultural celebrations, and a range of sports and exercise films ranging from managing active toddlers through to competitive sports and everything in between. The My T1D section is a place where you can store your own information about your type 1. You can track your HbA1c and time in range. You can add appointments which sync to your phone's calendar, or your clinic can send you appointment reminders and messages direct to your app. There is information on sick day rules. You can make notes or even voice notes to help you prepare for your clinic appointments. You can store your insulin to carbohydrate ratios and correction doses, and your long-acting insulin. And if you use an insulin pump, then the basal rate can also be stored with as many intervals as you need. There is space for your total average daily dose and a place to store and view your digital school or college healthcare plan. On the settings cog, choose My Account, and then you can choose to opt in to sharing award information with your clinic. You can also choose a preferred language. Your clinic's contact number is always there in case you need to get in touch.
So very briefly, DigiBete is there to educate, organise and communicate with you and your diabetes teams to facilitate that communication with your team, help you organise diabetes and also provide age-appropriate education. But we're doing lots of work with JDRF in terms of psychology support as well. These are some new resources that we've developed for specifically the older ones, but lots of new resources coming online all the time. So this is the new psychology area we're going to have called Coping with Diabetes. You're going to be able to access things an age-appropriate area for your young person and also parents eventually. A really important piece of work. Carb counting is coming into DigiBete, and we've been developing a new chatbot for DigiBete as well, called DigiBot, which we're currently trialing at Leeds Children's Hospital, and then it will be have wider adoption at some point. This is some of the work that's been going on with JDRF around psychology, such an important piece of work, and schools is a massive theme of this. So they expect some more resources specifically to support schools through this. I'm going to skip here, but we've got lots of resources we've created, like the mammoth, but we're also now doing an animation of how to handle a diabetes hedgehog as well, getting people to think about narrative therapy around the diabetes. Schools resources on the page. Please go to digibete.org for all the schools resources. There's a massive amount if you haven't looked at them, and they're always being renewed. And there's also useful links for schools on each of these pages as well. So it's everything from exams to managing hypos and hypers, young people's stories that you could show, why good care is important to young people, potentially on Diabetes Day, etc., to raise awareness. Last to say, really, if you haven't got the app, please ask your diabetes team for your unique clinic code. Everyone should have it now. We've got 95% of clinics using it. But if you don't have a clinic code for any reason, get in touch with us and we'll try and work that out for you. Okay, thanks so much. And a big thank you to JDRF for a wonderful collaboration that we have with them. And we're very grateful and for supporting young people on the ground in such a really practical way.
Oh, thank you so much, Maddie. That's really useful information on DigiBete's resources there. I'm just going to finish off with some last bits from JDRF. I'm just going to share my screen, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for another 5 minutes or so. I just wanted to run through the Let's Talk About Type 1 Diabetes school pack. It's a free information pack for parents and schools that we have to support young people with type 1 diabetes in school, at home, and when socialising. Our school pack equips parents and teachers with the information they need to understand type 1 and support children in school and when visiting the homes of friends. Comes in a hard copy and in an e-download format. The pack is made up of A5 folder, which includes our school guide, our parents guide, our hypo procedure guide, our student hypo card, and our assembly plan. We also have a free, We also have a free e-learning module for schools to learn more about supporting pupils with type 1 diabetes in educational settings. The incidence of type 1 is increasing by 4% each year. Current legislation states that it is the duty of staff who work with children who or young people living with type 1 to support them appropriately. To ensure staff have all the information they need, we have worked closely with the NCYPDN and Virtual College to produce this module, which is made up of 2 sections, basic and advanced. Here at JDRF, we want to help support and ensure your type 1 diabetes is not an obstacle to university life. The information on this site, so the University Toolkit on JDRF's website, will help you manage your condition effectively while studying. Our UniKit has been made in collaboration with DUK and NHS England and has a whole selection of themes such as planning and preparing for university, exams and stress, managing sick days, and new friends and relationships. So included in the downloads, you can find Guide for Friends, Guide for Flatmates, and HCP transfer letter templates. Next on the agenda, we have our Cardiff Discovery Day on the 8th of October, which is very exciting. If you have not been to a physical Discovery Day before, the event is designed in the same way as our virtuals to provide valuable insight, support and inspire all those affected by type 1. It's a family-friendly day, open to adults and children affected by type 1, along with healthcare professionals. There will be speakers discussing lived experience, just like you saw today, along with new research and lots of peer support. We provide entertainment for primary school age children that would run along speaker sessions, as well as obviously peer support throughout the events for both adults and teenagers, with a real focus on bringing those sub-communities together. As part of the event, you would also have the opportunity to visit the technology exhibition to hear more from our sponsors on how the latest devices and technology can be used to help manage type 1. So just like this event today, it's completely free. So if you're local or fancy a day trip, make sure you sign up on our website. The link will be dropped in the chat. If you're not able to make it to our Cardiff Discovery Day, however, we have an upcoming Adult Technology Virtual on the 4th of November, which is again a Saturday. And just like this one, the event is completely free, so make sure you do sign up if you are interested. Additionally, we now have the option to register your interest for future Discovery Day events taking place in early 2024. In January, we have another virtual, which will discuss all things mental health and managing your well-being with type 1. In February, we'll be going to London for an in-person Discovery Day, and then in March, we'll be flying up to Aberdeen for another in-person Discovery Day. If you are interested in any of those events, then make sure you follow the link that's in the chat and register your interest to hear the first updates. We can't wait to see you there. Also, just want to touch on some really exciting upcoming fundraising opportunities going on in 2024. So we have the London Landmarks Half Marathon taking place on Sunday, 7th of April. And that will happen on the closed roads through central London, which is actually the only half marathon to go through both the City of London and the City of Westminster. We've also got the Brighton Marathon on the 7th of April, which is an iconic marathon which takes runners through the city of Brighton and onto the seafront. It's a really good alternative for anyone who didn't get a place in the London Marathon. We've got a couple ultra marathons if you're feeling very much like you want to challenge yourself. They're hugely popular and great to do with friends. And we've got the Great Manchester Run on the 26th of May. And in true Mancunian style, it's a party from start to finish. Runners will experience a high energy soundtrack, live music, entertainment around every turn, plus some of the loudest and most enthusiastic local supporters in the whole of the UK. And with a choice of between 10k and a half marathon, it's accessible for all runners and all abilities. Places are limited for these, so make sure you snap yours up quickly. Check out all of our events actually using the QR code on the screen there, or email events@jdrf.org.uk. We're also asking our supporters to take on 10,000 steps a day in support of the 400,000 people with diabetes, type 1 diabetes in the UK. However, you can choose any distance that suits you for this challenge. So whether you take on the challenge yourself as a family or with friends of your family, you are raising money for life-changing research and supporting the 400,000 people living with type 1 in the UK. You can join this challenge through the Facebook group, through the QR code, and once you register, you will receive a free, lovely JDRF t-shirt. And finally, you can join us for a memorable evening of carols and special performances in the stunning surrounds of St. Paul's Cathedral. You can buy the tickets through the link in our chat, as well as Christmas cards if you're feeling extra organised. We also have a lot of volunteering opportunities available. If you have type 1 or if you're supporting someone with type 1, you could join our Insight and Experience panel at our Discovery Days and share your experiences and shed some insight. Or you could come and volunteer at our Discovery Days or fundraising events and just be a friendly face to attendees. Once again, you can find all of this information out and more on our website if you are interested. So a huge thank you to all of our sponsors, our wonderful speakers, my wonderful JDRF colleagues who we have on here today, who've been supporting us, and to all of you who have turned up to watch today's event. We hope it's been an event that you've enjoyed and taken some useful information from. We really do appreciate you being here today. We are going to hold the webinar open until 1:30 to give anyone a chance to read anything they might have missed in the chat and Q&A. We'll also be sending out a recording of this event through email, so keep an eye out for that over the next week or so. Feel free to share this far and wide if you found this event useful. And finally, we would really appreciate your feedback on this event through our evaluation form. We just would love to know what you liked about it, any improvements we could make. And I think that will be in the chat now. If you would like to fill that form in now, then that's brilliant. But if you would like to do it at a later time, then we will be sending an email out with that form in it this afternoon. Thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we really hope to see you soon at our future Discovery Day events.